Hey everybody, thanks for being part of the live stream. This is an Ask Me Anything. It's me, Cyber Attack, also known as Ivan Anderson. It's nice to see you all today. You know, doing these Ask Me Anythings is my favorite part about being a YouTube person. Um, all right, I got a bunch of good questions ahead of time. Anyone who's a YouTube member or a Patreon is guaranteed to have their question addressed on the live stream. But I'm also going to try to get through as many of the chat questions as I can. You know, the chat culture on these things is very robust. So I'm gonna do what I can to like stoke the chat, and then also try to get through the questions that I'm contractually obligated to respond to because of my Patreon user agreement. All right, hope everybody's having a good day. Let's go right in. This is a question I got from someone called Nico DeGallo 7886. This was a nice softball question, the kind I like to start a live stream with. Take your pick, Mahavishnu or weather report. Sometimes when I'm like putting together the questions ahead of time, I see one and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great first question. Thank you. So that's how I felt about this one. All right, Mahavishnu or weather report. You know, it's been a while since I spent time with either of these guys. So this is like not based on like recent passionate listening, but I'm going to choose weather report, you know, and this is really based on one thing, which is that I feel like Mahavishnu is, at least my memory of Mahavishnu is that that's like closer to progressive rock. And usually the thing that's closer to progressive rock is the thing that I like less. So I'm just, you know, Weather Report wins almost by default in a way, because I feel like Weather Report was closer to jazz and Mahavishnu was closer to progressive. And progressive rock is one of the few genres that I just almost kind of can't deal with as a genre. Look at this one. Do a tier list of Chase Bliss pedals. What's your favorite? What's your favorite reverb? I am going to do a tier list of reverbs in general. I'm going to rank every reverb pedal I've ever had. So you'll be excited about that. I don't know if I've played enough Chase Bliss pedals to do the tier list. I think I've only really played half their line. You know, how many have I played? Mood, Onward, Habit, Lossy, Clean. That might be it. You know, it's like not a lot for a tier list. But I can tell you what my favorite is, no question, is the Lossy. I mean, the Lossy is I think a really incredible pedal. I love that pedal. That to me is like ultra tier. That feels like a pedal I need in order to like do the Cyber Attack project. Oh right, yeah, I know. There's the Fairfield reverb. Listen, I've been waiting for that for a while. You know, I'm not trying to be annoying, but like I've sort of known that was going to be a thing for kind of a while. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. You know, I hope to get one and make a video about it, but I can't start holding back videos just for that. You know what I mean? At some point, we all got to move on. Let's look at this. Oh well, at first let me just deal with this person. I love your videos. Very generous with your ideas. Thank you. I appreciate the comment. I see from time to time people being like, "Wow, it's so nice of you to, or so brave of you to give this away," or like, "It's the opposite of gatekeeping," or like, I can't believe you're telling us all your secrets or all your ideas." And while I'm glad that I'm glad that like people are thankful or appreciative or whatever. You know, to me, I don't even really feel like I'm being that generous, because the truth is that like I really don't think you're going to be able to rip me off, even if you do all the things I tell you how to do in my videos. And this is the part where like it might even actually start to sound kind of cocky or obnoxious. And I'm just going to be real with you. Judge me how you want. But I kind of feel like you're not going to be able to rip me off just because you use pedals the way I do, you know? And that like I think my playing is really the thing that is why it sounds good when I do all the shit that I do with the pedals and whatever else, you know? So I'm happy to tell you every single part of what I'm thinking and what the secret is and what the trick is, you know? But I also just spent a lot of time practicing without fucking around with pedals, and that's, I think, what made me the player that I am. And I really, I don't think anybody's going to be able to rip that part off by watching YouTube. I just don't. So I appreciate the comment, but I'm really, I'm not really taking much of a chance in my own mind. Does Radiohead count as progressive rock? No, I don't think so at all. No. To me, progressive rock is like, Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Yes and stuff like that in the 70s. I like some Yes. Yes, I'm prepared to make an exception for. But in some ways the Yes I like the most is like the Trevor Rabin like 80s cheesy Yes, like Owner of a Lonely Heart and stuff, which is like more kind of zany 80s bullshit and less progressive. Surprise, surprise. But I like 70s Yes too. And I like Pink Floyd, which sometimes gets described as a progressive rock band, but I don't really think of them that way. I think of Pink Floyd as just like almost like the 70s version of Radiohead or something, and that I think they're trying to push stuff sonically and the vibe is cool. But to me, progressive rock is like look at me bullshit. I think a lot of Emerson, Lake and Palmer is kind of that. I think Rush is that, and then it sort of turned into a metal thing, like Dream Theater. And that's, I don't I don't want to spend the whole live stream talking trash, but no. Oh, look at this. Do you ever worry about your nimble wizard guitar fingers when you use them as blunt force meat smashers in the boxing ring? I really don't. I really don't. I mean, I've never, maybe saying this is going to fuck it up, but I've never had like real finger injuries. I rap. I wear 16-ounce gloves. My hands is like the most protected part of the whole thing when I'm boxing. All the injury I've gotten injuries before, but it'll be from like, it's like weird spastic sports shit is the injuries I get. You know what I mean? Like overextending a joint because I'm being an asshole and clumsy or whatever. Stuff like that, or like hurting my shoulder, because I like fucked up a push up or something terrible like that. The injuries I get are like usually not, or like blister. I get blisters on the balls of my feet, from like pivoting and everything. All the injuries I get are like random bullshit sports injuries, kind of. You know what I mean? So far. So no, I don't really worry about my hands. Also I'm not a pussy, so that's part of it too. All right, hold on. There was a question I wanted to get to up a second ago. Yeah, here we go. A lot of your content is about finding your unique sound by pushing the boundaries or thinking creatively with pedals. How do you apply this to music theory or your playing in general? Man, that's a good question. I hope I can do it justice. Oh, okay. All right. Here's maybe an answer off the top of my head. I think it's like good to understand the rules, and then it's good to sort of break the rules. But I think the trick is to see if you can break the rules from a place of understanding them and even kind of respecting them. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a cliche, but everybody talks about how like Picasso could paint very realistically before he went nuts. That's basically what I'm saying. Like, anytime you're learning anything, see if you can learn the conventional thing. And then, even if you don't, I'm not saying you have to love it. I'm not saying you have to have conventional taste or that has to be the thing you want to do. But like, try to see the logic in it. Try to understand this is why this is the way it is. When they say chords have functions and the function of the 5 chord is to pull you back to the 1 chord, that I don't think anybody seriously says you have to use a 5 chord that way. I don't even think that's what music theory is about. I don't think music theory is like telling you this is what you're supposed to do. I think music theory is just we gave certain things happened so much that you could sort of name the vibe, and so we had to come up with names in order to do it, and so we came up with names. And there was this one sort of vibe that everybody kept noticing again and again and again, which is that like if you're in the key of G and you play a D chord, that D chord kind of pulls you into another G chord. You could do other shit, of course you can, that's fine, but let's just pause for a second and see, can we name the fact that the D chord has this kind of thing you can hear that pulls you into a G chord? And the names we came up with were, that's like the function of the 5 chord. That's the dominant function, pulls you back to the tonic. Now, that's a story I made up just now. That's not like literally how this stuff happened. It wasn't like a bunch of people in a committee had the conversation. I just paraphrased. But I think that's how you should think about it, right? So like you can write non-functional chord progressions. Just listen to how it sounds. What could possibly be cooler and better than a non-functional chord progression? Like it just, just as the name of a thing, non-functional chord progression is like Cybertech written all over it. There's nothing I want more for you than to write a cool non-functional chord progression. But I think you should try to see if you can get what they meant when they invented function. See if you can get it. And then once you understand it, then see if you can hear what the opposite of that will be, And then which thing do you think sounds cooler? Try to finish the thing that sounds cooler. So I think it's the same thing with pedals, right? Like you can understand what the pedal's trying to do. Why does a modulated delay time create a vibrato effect? Or how do they create a chorus effect? It's because the modulating a delay line creates fluctuations in pitch. If you combine that fluctuation in pitch with the original dry signal, you get a chorusing. If you just listen to the modulated delay line, you get a chorus effect. When you understand some of the shit that's happening under the hood with the effects, there's ideas there about, well, how can we sort of break the effect? You know what I mean? So I would say that's I think the thing that ties the two ideas together. It's being a certain kind of student. You know what I mean? Like, I think you should try to be a good student. Try to be a student who understands the thing you're trying to learn, and then, try to be a certain kind of bad student where you like try to obliterate the thing you just learned. But don't do step 2 until you can like honestly say with a pure heart that you really understood part 1. I think that's the answer to the question. All right. Okay. All right. We're gonna keep pitch shifting. Perfect fifths is one of the best tricks you've ever taught. Thanks. Yeah. That's definitely a sound that I feel like people could rip off. You know what I mean? There's a song on my first record called Autopilot that is like the song where I do that. And sometimes I feel like I should release a couple more songs where I do that because I sort of feel like that is one of my top pro tips. But if other people get there first, it's my own fault for taking too long. All right, cool. There's just a comment here that says Wayne Shorter. I don't know when this comment got left. I don't know what it was referring to. I don't know what the reference is, but I just love that like something I said at some point resulted in a comment that was just the words Wayne Shorter. That's good. All right, cool. We're gonna keep going through these questions. Are you worried that the algorithm selects for the obvious functional chord progressions? Are you tempted to use what I will call a Taylor Swift progression? Yeah, for sure. I think if you can make a Taylor Swift progression sound good, that's cool. I think she makes them sound good, now and then. This is exactly the kind of shit I'm talking about. Once you notice that, like, well, there's a certain kind of very functional, very diatonic chord progression that Taylor Swift uses a lot, the next thought in your head should be, well, how could I make one cool? Also, here's the other thing. Like, chord progressions is not the whole game. There's rhythm, there's melody, there's timbre. You could fuck with all those other things. You could be as, like, anti as possible with the timbre and the rhythm and the melody, And then if you just, like, violently shove those things on top of a very functional diatonic chord progression, that would probably sound cool. You see what I mean? So the answer is yes, of course. All right, here's another one. This was another like nice early softball question. Kahler or Floyd? This is which tremolo system or which whammy bar system do I prefer? I don't use whammy bar at all. I talked about this on the previous live stream. I sort of made this pact with myself early on that there were certain things I was not going to fuck with in order to force myself to be more creative, and whammy bar was one of them. However, I can still answer this question because my guitar teacher was a Floyd guy. My guitar teacher did fuck with whammy bar. He was into it. He was like an 80s shredder. He could shred with the best of them by 80s standards. And he was Floyd Rose. So if my guitar teacher picked Floyd Rose, then as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure he had sophisticated reasons for that. Floyd Rose is my answer too. Listen to this shit. He largely taught himself by ear. He then later found a teacher, this guy named Eric Horn in New Jersey. But my guitar teacher, whose name is Ed Fuhrman, he taught himself by ear, learning from records. And then he would sort of figure out the record note by note and then sort of look at it and try to deconstruct it and figure out, like, what's the logic here, which is sort of a hard way to learn, but he stuck with it and he did it. And he also had a Floyd Rose thing on his guitar, so it was hard and annoying to retune, but he loved Yngwie Malmsteen. And so he spent a lot of time learning Yngwie Malmsteen stuff off the record, but Yngwie Malmsteen tuned down a half step. And my guitar teacher couldn't fuck with that because he was locked into standard because of his Floyd Rose whammy bar system. So he had like a variable speed turntable, and he sped up Yngwie Malmsteen just enough to get Yngwie Malmsteen back into standard tuning, and then he learned the records. So he learned to play Yngwie Malmsteen a little bit faster than Yngwie Malmsteen. That's the kind of guy he was. By the way, my guitar teacher wrote a book. I have it right here. It's called The Ultimate Guitar Practice Guide, a self-help guide for struggling guitarists everywhere. I highly recommend you buy this book. If you're watching this, that means there's something about my YouTube channel you like, and if there's something about my YouTube channel you like, then there's going to be a lot you're going to like about this book. My guitar teacher wrote it. Look, there he is. That's Ed Fuhrman. There's a link in the video description to where you can buy it. I'm also in it. I'm only in it a little bit, so don't get it for that reason. But if you get it and you read it, you might get a kick out of the part where I'm in it just a little bit. Will you transition to jazz gigs as you get older? I've already done jazz gigs. There was this guy who might be watching. Georgie, if you're out there, thanks again. I'll always love you. I was brought to this like jazz federation building in Hamburg. There's this like jazz, I don't know, it's like a Lincoln Center type place in Hamburg, Germany. And they hired me to do a gig because of this guy, Georgie, who found me and brought me out there and then played in the show with me. And he told me, like, they would love you, just like do the stuff you do. We'll do a little bit of jazz. It'll be cool. So I was like, okay, sure. They like paid my way. They paid me for the show. I thought it was just going to be some weird night of experimental cyber tech bullshit. He put a band together. It was me, him on bass, and a drummer. Really cool. We like picked some songs beforehand. Some of them were jazz. Some of them were just like cyber tech freak out shit. And then when I got there, I like looked at the program, and I was being billed as Jazz Master Ivan Anderson, aka Cyber Attack, and it was part of this series called Jazz Masters, where like every Thursday night or whatever the fuck it was, the people of Hamburg would like come to this place and see the latest in the line of jazz masters. And I was like, is this a good idea? Like these people like go to a lot of jazz master concerts. Like I don't, are they going to get what they want when it's my turn? I don't know. And he was like, yeah, I didn't tell you that part on purpose because I didn't want you to freak out, but it'll be good. Don't worry about it. Just do what you do. It'll be fine. And then the other thing is that, he was like, you use the pedals, bring the pedals, but the pedals will be part of it. But my pedals, so I brought a bunch of pedals, and then my bag got lost. The airline lost my bag of pedals, so I didn't have my gear. So he was like, that's okay. I'll just borrow a bunch of pedals from my friends and shit. So he did. I mean, it really came through for me. So I show up. I have to use like all these guys' other effects. I'm being billed as a jazz master. It's like kind of stressful. And I can hang. I can play over changes. Like it's not going to sound like I eat, sleep, and breathe jazz all day long, because I don't. But I know how to do music, and I know how to do the shit that I do. So I was like, all right, let's fucking do it. I didn't have anything else I needed to do in Hamburg, so I just kind of like learned how to use the new pedals I got. It was like, it wasn't my stuff, but it was stuff I could figure out. Like, I didn't bring a Volante, but somebody had a Volante, so I figured that out. And like someone had an Electroharmonics Super Ego. It's like a super glitchy pedal, so I like figured that out. We like figured out how to do the tunes that needed the pedals with the new pedals. And then I remember at the sound check, we decided to run one of the like harder tunes, or one of the tunes I thought was harder. that had like the most changes and was more sort of like one of the straighter jazz songs. It was one he wrote, Georgie, and it was one of the ones where it's like you kind of had to just follow the chords or not follow them, but it was one of the ones where like I was really playing and like I wasn't just hiding behind pedal bullshit and like flying over the top with noise. Like it was one where I was like trying to do it. So we sound checked that one. And also it was like jazz form. It's like you play the head, then you take solos, then you play the head, and then you're done. So we ran it and I improvised the solo, and I remember thinking like that was good. Like the solo I just improvised was like better than what I'd done in the rehearsal, better than what I'd done on my own. I like improvised a good solo. And I remember thinking to myself like, you know, there's a good chance that might be cooler than what I improvised tonight at the show. There's a strong likelihood that what I just improvised as my solo in this one is going to beat whatever I do in like 90 minutes from now. And then it was like the age-old question where it's like, well, should I like try to remember what I did, you know, or should I just like try to improvise again? And I was like, I mean, I can't just try to remember what I did, right? That's disrespectful to Pat Metheny or whatever, you know. They put my name on the marquee as a jazz master here, and I'm gonna walk on stage and like try to remember some licks, you know. That's not what jazz is about. So I improvised again at the show, and it wasn't as good as the sound check. And something about, I mean, it was okay, it was fine. Like, no, I didn't get booed or anything. You know, people clapped. But the audience, I felt like the audience was like, okay. You know, the feeling I got was like they were like, this guy has kind of a different thing that he does. But okay, it was interesting. You know, I don't think anybody was like, wow, he's the best jazz musician we've seen in this series. You know, but I don't think they thought like, well, what the fuck was that? I think they're like, all right, yeah, that guy's got his own point of view, which I accept. You know, that was victory. Anyway, there was something about like having the experience of like nailing it on the sound check and then trying to improvise again an hour and a half later and having it not be as good. That to me, I felt like a sort of bond with the jazz musicians through the ages, you know, where it's like, yeah, we picked something hard, you know. It's like you're going to have your ups and your downs with this shit if you really dedicate yourself to improvising. So, you know, I got a kick out of that. It was a positive experience. All right, cool. So here's another one I got ahead of time. You guys are going to like this one, and I'm going to give you what you want, too. I'm like really going to answer this next question. This is from Wookie What? Question is, what's the most you've ever been disappointed by a pedal? It's possible this is going to be a controversial answer. I'm not saying it to be controversial. I'm saying it to tell the truth. The most disappointed I've ever been is with the Boss CE2 Waza, the Boss Chorus Waza. And I'll tell you why I don't think it's good. It's because the stereo on that pedal is fucked up. If you run that pedal in stereo, one output is dry and the other output is wet. And I think that is by far the least cool possible stereo image you could do with the chorus pedal. I do have a Boss chorus pedal that sounds just like the Boss CE2 Waza and doesn't do that, but it's out of production. It's the Boss CE3. Longtime viewers might have heard me talk about this before. I might even have it back here. Let me see. Hold on a second. Yeah, here it is. This is the reason I don't like the Boss CE2. It's the Boss CE3. The stereo image on this is awesome if you use it. It's one output is the combination of wet and dry, and the other output is the difference between wet and dry. They're doing some destructive interference shit there. This pedal can also do a pure vibrato sound if you want, just like the CE2. So this pedal does everything the CE2 does, but has a better stereo image. So I think this is the one to get. Here's the other thing. I bought this pedal. See how fucked up it is? I bought this pedal used from my guitar teacher, who I was talking about before. This used to be his. I bought it when I was like 14. So there's a sentimental attachment to it too, for sure. But I don't think that's clouding my judgment. That's not why I'm saying what I'm saying. I'm saying what I'm saying is because I think the Boss CE2W's stereo thing is disappointing. Another Boss chorus with a great stereo spread is the Dimension one. That one's great. You know, that one is super wide and intricate and cool. The fact that the Waza is like costs more and it has a bad stereo image is part of why I think it is disappointing. Like I think you would do better just to get the mono CE2, not Waza, because it's cheaper. I think that's a better value. Although that one can't do the vibrato. So really what you should do is just get a used CE3. Lastly, let me say that I love Boss. I think Boss is great. You know, it's in my top 3 pedal companies of all time. The Boss PS6 Harmonist is one of my favorite pedals. I put that pedal in ultra tier. You know, it's also was a huge video on my channel. I love the Boss CE3. I love Boss. I'm not. No one should watch this and think that I'm talking shit about Boss. I do talk shit on these live streams. You know, you'll know when I'm talking shit. This is not one of the times when I'm talking shit. Cool. All right. Anything else I missed in the chat? Jeremy, great question, good answer. Thanks, babe. Nice to see you as always. Thank you for being a part of this. Oh, and look at my guy here, Razark. What a good question. I know you love the blood sport. This dude is only here for the hostility and the bullshit. Look at this. Canadian $2. Fuck, marry, kill. Fuzz, delay, vibe, trem. That's hard. That's really hard. I love all 3 of these. Man, what am I gonna do? Fuck. Jesus Christ. I love all 3. God, this is brutal. And also for $2, I gotta answer such a hard question. I mean, look, I appreciate the fact that you're giving money, but like, really, $2 is like less than it should cost for me to have to answer a question this hard. Just putting that out there. I'll do it. But you really fucking lowballed me on this. Fuzz, delay, vibe, trem. All right, well, the hardest here is kill. You know, I got to kill one of these. I guess I would kill fuzz. I really hate saying that. But I feel like there's other ways to get weird, fucked up distortion sounds. You know, and I could get some like weird, what the fuck is that distortion sounds, even if I couldn't use fuzz. So I guess I would kill fuzz. I mean, I wouldn't be happy about it, but I would kill it. And then vibe or trem. I mean, those are 2 completely different effects. Like that's another thing. Like you really, that slash is like doing way too much work. You know, that slash is working even fucking harder than Slash and Guns N' Roses works, and that's a slash that works. Because tremolo I use as like a rhythm thing. You know, I love putting like a bass sound or a synth sound through a trem, like ba 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 ba, and having that be the rhythm. And then vibrato I use as like a, you know, lo-fi. You took too much cough medicine. You know, it's time to like turn out the lights and watch some TV in the living room while you like, you know, uncomfortably fall asleep. That's what a vibrato effect is for me. It has nothing to do with trem. So I sort of am the most protective of that one because it's 2 completely different effects that I like to use. But then, of course, on the other hand, delay can be delay, and delay can also be vibrato. So it's almost like which multi-effect do I want to spend more time with? That's the one I'll marry. Jeez, I feel like I really need tremolo to do some of my rhythm shit. So I'll marry vibe trem and fuck delay. But I really do not feel good about any part of this question. Look at this. Can you do a cue for my 6-year-old Henry? He's a fan, although he doesn't understand some of the words you use as they don't exist in England. What's that supposed to mean? He wants to know your favorite level in Smash 64. All right, that's a cool question. It's a little surprising to me that your 6-year-old is familiar with Super Smash Bros. 64. You know, that game's been out a pretty long time, and there have been a lot of Super Smash Bros. Since that one that I would expect today's 6-year-olds to care more about. But you know, okay, I'll take this at face value. I'm assuming there's not like it's true that you have a 6-year-old who cares about Nintendo 64. What's my favorite level in that one? I like the levels that are not like super noisy and like crapshooty. Like the Samus level with the lava, I feel like anything could be happening. You could be winning on skill, and then the lava comes, and it's like, well, never mind. It was just a lottery. So I don't like that one. So what are the least like that levels? I guess the Kirby level. You know, you can't hide in the Kirby level. It's a small ring. I also kind of like the Pokemon level. The Pokemon I don't think are too stupid, and you can do a little bit of outside fighting, but it's not cheap. And Hyrule, you get more hearts in Hyrule, and the hearts stress me out. You know what I mean? It's like it's the same thing. You'd be having a fight, and then all of a sudden the heart comes, and it's like it doesn't even matter what happened. It just matters who can get to the heart. And there's more hearts in the Zelda level because hearts are from Zelda or something. So not Zelda. Star Fox is too big. The other ones are too annoying. I guess it's Pokemon or Kirby. All right, look at this $10 question from Sonic Cartography. Thank you. Thanks for the $10. Hey, longtime lurkers here. I took some advice you once gave someone on another AMA, and I shot my shot on something big music related, and it worked. So I feel like I owe you big time, because I'm glad to hear it. That's awesome. That's great. I'm happy for you, man. Congratulations. Thanks for the $10. Let that be a lesson to everybody. All right, cool. Have you ever smashed a guitar or destroyed gear on purpose? I've never smashed a guitar. I've never done that. All the guitars I have, I'm sort of care about, and like I don't want to break them because I just want to keep them. I've never destroyed my pedals on purpose, but I do drop them, and I could probably be a little more careful. And like shit falls off my desk, and like I'm a little bit of a. Oh, and my guitars all get super dinged up. There's dents on all of them. They are all kind of fucked up. So there's that. I'm not super careful with my shit. Everything gets kind of scratched up. What's your favorite pizza topping? Man, it depends on the place. It depends on the place. Like, I like some of the like hot honey and pepperoni and like sweet spicy shit that they're doing now. I like some of that, even though it's kind of trendy. But some places do it and it's terrible. There's some places will do like a sausage and peppers. In Jersey, there's some like good sausage and peppers pizzas out there. But like, I wouldn't want to do the one at 7-Eleven that's like that. So honestly, I think overall, if I could only have one type of pizza for the rest of my life, it would just be plain. Pizza is my favorite food. I really love pizza. I think it's incredible. I love pizza I like frozen pizza. I mean, I like real pizza more, but even frozen pizza, I'm like, oh, nice. You know what I mean? Like if I had to rank all the food in the world from all of it from like 0 to 10, I would put Newman's Own frozen pizza at like 9. And all of the pizza that's better than Newman's Own would have to be like higher than 9, So that's the kind of guy you're talking to. Do you party? No, I do not. I don't do any of that. I mean, the people who do, I got nothing but respect for you. I wish you the best. I do get it. Drugs are the pedal board of the mind. But that part of my life is over. I don't do that anymore. Okay. All right, cool. Let's keep going. All right. I really love where the chat is at, but there's so many. We're entering the part of the stream where I get like stressed out about how much I have to do. All right. Here's one from Kearns 160. Oh, hold on. I got to do a money one. Oh, this is a retail pricing one, $4.99. I bought the PS6 because you, and it has been my most used pedal for 3 years. I'm getting a Roland Juno soon to play Synths with it too. Thanks, man. Oh, I like the ones where it's just like there's no question. I appreciate that. You're just trying to say something and get on the kiss cam. Well, that's cool, man. I'm glad it's everything. I'm glad it's all happening. I'm genuinely happy for you. All right, holiday edition from Kearns 160. How do you feel about Christmas music? If you had to cover a song from the holiday canon, which would you choose and why? I'm like not a Christmas music fan, really. I'm over it. I can't hear it anymore. Like it just goes in and I'm like, yeah. It's like, I don't know. It's like when the white, if you like paint your walls white and then slowly the white turns to yellow and you don't even notice because you've been looking at it so long that like you can't even tell what color your own wall is. Like that's my relationship with Christmas music. You know, like I can't hear it. You know, there's no words on it. If I had to cover one, you know, I guess I don't know. Some of the Tchaikovsky stuff is cool, right? You know, I guess it's all the Nutcracker Ballet. I mean, even that's cliche too. I get it. It's super played out. But that stuff is cool. You know, those are the cool jams. Tchaikovsky was good. I don't know anything about classical music, but that stuff sounded cool. I mean, maybe it's middlebrow. I don't even know. But, you know, I guess I would pick something from there, I guess. Yeah. All right. That's the best I can do with Christmas. All right, here's one from Mike. For me, Xmas music is Michael Jackson. There's nothing more Xmas than MJ and playing Mega Drive. Yeah, I think I understand what you mean. I mean, I try to guess what you mean, which is that if you're approximately my age, then during our childhood, Michael Jackson was extremely famous and was also putting out really cool stuff. So he was just everywhere. And then the Mega Drive came out, and he was like at one time involved in the soundtrack for Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic 3. And, you know, if you were a kid then and you had a Sega Genesis, that's what you wanted for Christmas. And so like Michael Jackson and Sega Genesis is like part of childhood. And like if you were a kid that celebrated Christmas, then that was like childhood's number one day of the year. And like, so all those things kind of blur together. I think I get it. All right, cool. So here's the next one I got to do. This is from Mike. Oh, I hope I can fit this in one box. No, I can't. Sometimes you say, I thought this would sound dumb in one of my videos, but it actually was pretty good. Have you ever had to leave something on the cutting room floor that really was dumb? That's something I thought was dumb and it was actually dumb? And if yes, can we hear it? Yeah, that's a cool question. I tried to think of something. So yes, this was going back a long time ago, but I did a video about the GFI synesthesia, which is like a multi-effect specializing in modulation sounds like chorus and flanger and phaser, but you can use any two of its effects at the same time. And some of its effects aren't even modulation. It's got like a random bit crusher in it and some pitch shifting shit in it. And when I made the video for it, I like they sent me the pedal and I had some time to read the manual before I got it, and I was in my head trying to think of like how am I going to make 5 pro tips with this, and I had this cool idea which was like, oh, it's got pitch shifting in it. What if I use the first effect slot to go up an octave, and then I use the second effect slot to go down an octave? So I'm just pitch shifting my signal twice, but it's going to end up in unison. I wonder if it'll come back to unison with like weird shit on it, you know, like maybe it'll sound resampled or something kind of interesting. Like that could be really cool if you're using like, if you're like canceling out the pitch shift with more pitch shift. It's like anti-shift, you know, that sounds like it would be a cyber attack thing. But when I did it, it just didn't sound that different, you know, which I guess is a credit to the pitch shifting in that pedal, but it just didn't sound interesting or weird or different, you know. I was like, man, that's too bad. I hope that would have that's the kind of thing that would have been dumb and great, but it was just sort of, it wasn't even dumb, it just sounded normal, so I couldn't do anything with it. But no, I don't have a lot more examples with that, because anytime I'm working on one of these YouTube videos, like if I have the idea and I'm working on it and it doesn't sound good, I just change the idea. I don't spend a lot of time building stuff out only to decide, no, you know what, that idea wasn't good enough. Like I try to commit early on, you know, either it's good enough or it's not. Either it's good enough or it's not. And if it's not good enough, I'm not going to sort of build out the arrangement and spend more time with it. I'm just going to start changing it. And then once it sounds good, I just feel like I'll know, you know. If you spend too long working on something that you don't know if it's good or not, it becomes harder to decide if it's good. the longer you spend being like, I don't know if I like this, it doesn't get easier to decide if you like it. It gets harder to decide if you like it. But if you just decide, I don't like that, I'm going to change them, do something else. I don't like that, I'm going to change, I'm going to do something else. Once you get something you like, it's, you're like, oh, that is better. I do like that more, But if you spend too much time in between, it's going to be in between forever. Would getting the syntax error 2 be redundant if the PS6? No, absolutely not. The syntax error 2 has a reverb in it that's incredible. I love the reverb in the syntax error. I would get it just for that reverb. It's a trashy but very, very, I don't know what it is. There's something about it. That reverb just sounds awesome. And if you like put some pitch shifting in it and bit crushing in it, it just sounds even better. So yeah, I think that's, I do not think they overlap. All right, let's keep going with the ones I have to answer. Here's one from Jeremy W. Which one of the action figures from your videos would you least like to street fight? In this scenario, you are action figure size. Follow up, what's the walkout music? What is the action figures walkout music? All right, well, if there's walkout music, it's not a street fight. Let's just be clear about that. But, yeah, least want to fight, I misread this. I spent all the time thinking about the action figure I'd most want to fight. And one of my action figures is this like G.I. Joe submarine guy. He's doing a dance. It's just a G.I. Joe in a submarine suit. And, I also asked a follow-up question. I got this on Patreon, and I went back and forth with the guy, and I was like, does the action figure have the powers of the guy that he is? Like if I pick the Terminator, does he have like the powers of the Terminator? Or if I pick like, if I pick Phoenix, like does Phoenix, can she like shoot fire at me, or is she just a plastic person that looks like Phoenix? And the guy's answer was like, they have the powers. Like Phoenix can do fire magic to me. So in that case, I was like, I want to fight, the G.I. Joes are just guys. I mean, I get that they're military guys. Maybe they would still kill me. Okay, fine. But I picked the one who's like in some bulky submarine suit, so that's got to slow him down a little bit. So I was like, maybe I could just fight a guy who's a guy wearing a stupid suit. But then we got here today, and I put it on the Kiss Cam, and that's when I realized it's the one I would least like to street fight. Terminator comes to mind. Terminator's like fucking hard to kill, but Sarah Connor killed him. They do get the Terminators do die in the movies. They are killable. So maybe I could do that. I don't know where the nearest hydraulic press is or the nearest vat of molten lava. So those are like the two proven kill methods. I don't really know where I would get either of those. But the Terminators do die at the hands of good guys in those movies. So maybe I could kill the Terminator. So who else is out there? Who's the most powerful? Oh, Apocalypse. Yeah, the X-Men villain Apocalypse. I have a couple Apocalypse animations. I've used Apocalypse a couple times. Apocalypse seems unkillable. When I was a kid and I watched the X-Men cartoon, the Apocalypse episodes really stressed me out. I was like, they're not going to be able to do this. Look at that guy. His name is Apocalypse. He's got unlimited powers. What are they going to do? So I choose Apocalypse. I got distracted for a second here. No offense, but I think Sarah Connor would beat your ass. All right, yeah, it's fine. She's hardcore. You can think that. That's all right. I'm not gonna pick a fight over that. Oh, and then entrance music. I talked about this in a previous live stream. I think Apocalypse, had a theme on the X-Men cartoon. I think there was most of those characters had themes. When I rewatched that episode now, I try to connect the little musical theme for each character. There's some I still haven't figured out what it is, but there's some, that I definitely pinned down. At some point, I'd love to make a YouTube video that just shows these are the themes used for every character, but I don't know what they all are. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like anytime Storm uses her powers, it goes, that's her theme. And like Wolverine's, I think, is something something like that. Each one has its own little melody. I think they had one. They definitely have some for some villains, like Juggernauts is some weird like major third thing. I think Apocalypse had one, so he would use that. And then I've said in the past, I think my walkout music would be "For Whom the Bell Tolls" by Metallica. That's what I've thought for since I was a kid. Since I was a kid and I ever fantasized about ring walks, I just always sort of felt like "For Whom the Bell Tolls" would be my choice. All right, cool. Here's one from someone named Isaac Bonface. Provocative username. Advice for someone on a budget. Yeah, okay, sure. I would say Boss. I told you before, I love Boss. Boss makes really high value pedals, in the sense that they're powerful, they're not expensive, I mean this in the like precise sense of value, in the sense that you're getting a lot for the money you're paying for it. And they're easy to find. Every store has Boss, they don't break, or if they do break, they're easy to replace. So I would say go Boss. And then, another piece of advice would be like, don't fuck around with a bunch of different versions of the same type of effect. Like don't get sucked into different fuzzes or different overdrives or different choruses. Don't do that. You know what I mean? Just like pick any pedal I've talked about on my channel. Any pedal that I've used in a video meant I thought it was cool. I send pedals back if I don't think I can do something cool with them. I don't make a video with something unless I think it's cool. So just fine. And I think I've talked about every kind of effect there is. And I made a video where I rank all the different types of effects. I have like a pedal tier list video. So you could just use anything I talked about on my channel on some sense is like kind of an endorsement. Pick the Boss version of it and then pick a new effect category. People get super nutty about this type of overdrive, that type of overdrive, this type. I don't think you need to do that. I don't think that's you shouldn't do that unless you're like ready to just waste some time on being geeky. And that's okay. I waste time on geeky shit. I spent time thinking about like, what are the themes in the X-Men animated TV series of the characters I haven't identified yet? Is that a good use of my time? There's no judgment here, but what I'm saying is just like, you do not need to start the pedals thing by trying to figure out like which overdrive is the number one overdrive. I would say, pick an overdrive that seems cool. If you don't know how to judge which one seems cool, use one that I use. Do that for every effects category. Stick with Boss as much as possible. I think you'll get a lot for your money that way. What setup would you use for Jamaican dub? Look, I don't know. There's a spring reverb and slapback, right? Isn't that the whole thing? I in my mind, Jamaican dub has like a lot of sort of like, there's the note and then there's the sort of like humidity after the note. That's what's cool about that stuff. It's like you're seeing shit. So to me, that's spring reverb. But I don't know. The questions like that. Why can't you answer it? I'm not trying to be an asshole here, but like, what do you hear and think about when you listen to it? You know what I mean? That's the setup you should use. Did I really just say anything that you yourself couldn't have heard? Yeah, look, I mean, there's this. People know more about it than I do. Dub was all about the Roland Space Echo, which has spring reverb in it. Okay, so there's more information for you. But the real way to answer this question is like, listen to it, identify the feeling, and then, try to chase the feeling, and if you're not going through life associating certain types of gear that you already have with certain types of feelings, well, there's your real problem. Try to make an ongoing inventory of the gear you have and what are the feelings that each piece of gear can do. Try to map your feelings and your gear. Try to do that. You know what I mean? That it'll come in handy. And then when you're done with that, and you want to take a different type of inventory of your life, I'd recommend it as well. All right, cool. Here's one from Ron Howard Live. I love that we got Ron Howard watching my streams. That's a little surprising to me. Favorite new artist albums that has any kind of influence on your playing? Is there any new technique you've learned or started using more recently in writing, recording, or gigging? I get asked the new artist question more often than I discover new artists. So I apologize that you might hear me repeat myself a little bit. But, any new thing Rachel Eckroth does, I think, is pretty cool. Her newest thing is always super cool. She's a keyboardist and a jazz musician. She's also the touring keyboardist for St. Vincent, which is, and that's rad too, but I don't think anybody needs me to tell them that St. Vincent's new material is cool. Of course it's cool. But I think you would do pretty good if you just looked at Rachel Eckroth's latest album, every 6 months and then just listened to it. It's always super cool. I always feel like it's, expands my mind. I mean, she can shred, but she also gets why, gear and bullshit is cool. She can do both things at a high level. Some people can shred, some people can't shred, and they're super good at like fucking around with effects. Not everybody can do both of those things, but she can. And then, who else? Resort Realism. I've talked about them before. They're like an indie band they're like the best lo-fi of all time. I got no problem saying that. I think the best lo-fi music that has ever been made is made by a band called Resort Realism. I love those guys. They make me want to do more lo-fi. Like I think of myself as a guy who does lo-fi stuff, and then anytime I listen to Resort Realism, I'm like, oh, I haven't even fucking started. I have not even done one lo-fi thing in my life. Listen to how good these guys are doing it. They're also like, I feel like their music really feels like you're in a place. And I feel like I sort of have to make animations to go with my music to do that. And they can do it without the animations. So those guys are pretty cool. All right. And then technique. Right, technique. Cool. Yeah, you know what I've been trying to do? I've been trying to get my sweep picking better. I don't do it a lot, but in my old band Sweet Fix, there were some solos. If you listen to my old band Sweet Fix, had a record called Golden Age, and I sweep a little bit on some of that stuff. I went back to my guitar teacher, Ed Fuhrman in New Jersey, the guy who wrote this book. I take guitar lessons with him again, like, a couple times every couple of years. I'll go back and like take another guitar lesson from my guy. And this past summer, I went a couple times to like really try to get my like economy picking good. And I've been working on that. Not at the level where I feel like I can show off with it yet. Like I'm trying to slow down and do it perfectly right, but not at like interesting speeds. And I used to sort of do it like I would sort of bullshit my way through it and like have a couple licks that were like, oh, look at that. But I was kind of forcing it. And I tried to, I'm like, I'm going to lose the licks. I'm going to lose that level of speed, but I'm going to do it right and build back up. And I'm still working on that. This is one of those things where like if you don't do it for a week, it's like you're starting over again. There's not everything is like that. Not everything is like you just lose it if you don't do it for 7 days. But this kind of picking coordination, I'm spending time on it. There's one solo on my unfinished album that I haven't done yet. There's one song that still needs a solo, and I keep not doing it because I want to see if I can become a better guitar player and then maybe use some of this on that. So anyway, there's your answer. Have you had a student has become the master with Ed yet? If not, do you think you ever will? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I almost kind of feel like you should just email him and ask him this. There's some shit my guitar teacher can do that I doubt I really hate to talk like this, but I doubt I'll ever be able to do some of it. There's some shit he can play that, like, if you gave me 2 lifetimes, I don't know if I could do it. I don't like to say stuff like that. You know, I really, because I feel like once you say that, then you make it, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, if you don't say it, maybe you could do it. If you decide you can't do it, you'll never do it. So I don't like to say stuff like that. So on a technical level, I don't think I could touch him. But I'm gonna say that not everything is on a technical level, and the truth is that you know, I think my creativity has led me to some places that other people haven't gone, including my guitar teacher. You know, I think I can think of some things and write some songs and have some ideas and, like, you know, find some angles that other people wouldn't have found, you know. And I think my guitar teacher is extremely good, but I think everybody has a chance to steal around from, you know, to punch above their weight a little bit with creativity. That's why creativity is cool. You know, it's not a sport, it's an art. And in art, you can sort of teleport in ways that you can't in shit that is not an art. You know, there's like mysterious shit that no one understands in the arts, and you can just sort of imagine your way into shit and have it work in a way that you sort of can't on a soccer field. I mean, creativity has a role in sports too, of course, but, like, at the end of the day, the team with the higher score wins, and that's that. And in the arts, that is never that. It's never finished. You never really know, like, what was cooler, you know, Steve Vai's picking speed or Lou Reed's lyrics. That's like an unresolvable question, you know, by definition. Like, the only way you could ever resolve that question would be to, like, make some value judgments about what's more important to you. Okay, but, like, if we're gonna live in value judgment world where, like, creativity counts, anything can be anything. You see what I'm saying? So you can always kind of steal around from anybody if you're just willing to be creative and do something kind of different, you know? So, like, this is how I measure myself against everybody that I think is better than me. You know, there's a lot of people that I think are better than me, but I got good enough and I have my own point of view, and I invested in my own point of view, and I can do shit that sounds like cyber attack that I don't think other people would have gotten to right away, including my guitar teacher. You know what I mean? So I don't think that means I'm the master, but you know, when's the last time my guitar teacher wrote a song with lyrics? Like, you know, that's not something he does. So you know, there you go. That's my answer. I hope that didn't seem disrespectful. All right, cool. Let's keep going. Also, let me just say, if anyone's in the tri-state area, you should just call my guitar teacher. I mean, the book is one thing. I love the book, but if you're in the tri-state area, just take a lesson from my guy. Like, it'll be the best guitar lesson you ever get. I give guitar lessons on Zoom. You could take a lesson from me. It's not going to be as good as the lesson from Ed. Ed is a better teacher than me, and also a better guitar player. All right, let's keep going. Okay, here's one. This is clearly from someone who's clearly watched my channels, my videos. Give us your quick tier list of the OG gaming console sound chips: SNES, Genesis, Game Boy Advance, etc. I don't know about the sound chips. I don't know. I'm sorry. I understand why you think I would know about that, but I don't know about it. I just played the video games. The only video game systems I ever had were Sega Genesis and Nintendo 64, and I don't know about the fucking sound chips. I mean, maybe Sega Genesis was doing, like, FM synthesis, and the other ones weren't. You know, I mean, I think I was team Sega Genesis, that's for sure. You know, like, when in my childhood, you know, SNES versus Genesis was the rivalry of our time. It was that, you know, like Muhammad Ali, Frazier, that was over. We needed to replace it with something, and it got replaced with SNES versus Genesis. Okay. And just like Ali Frazier, you know, one of those two was like a incredible, legendary humanitarian, clearly superior, and that was the Sega Genesis. So my answer is Sega Genesis. Based on what? I don't fucking know. I mean, if it really was doing FM synthesis and the other ones weren't, that's cool. I would love to be able to pin my answer on that. You know, but I have no idea if that's true. Nintendo 64 games had some cool soundtracks, but I think the sound libraries in general were a little more like Fruit Punch, just a little bit more sort of generic. I mean, I loved some of them, but like the Sega Genesis sounds just feel like they're like zapping your brain. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm like getting CTE when I listen to that shit, and I like that. I'm pro CTE. So. Look at it. Jeremy is my guy. I believe that is correct. In fact, the FM synthesis link. I've never loved you more, my man. I've never loved you more. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. I love these questions. I love you all. All right. Here's a big one from Forrest Salamita. I don't know how to say any of these names. All right, this is like 3 different. I can't fit this on one screen. I'm sorry. Do you have a framework for deciding on when to continue or stop working on a musical idea? We all have limited time, and sometimes I find myself at a crossroads. Do I try and flesh out the idea currently working on, or do I scrap it and move on to the next thing? I've had success both ways, but many times I'll try to force an idea until I get to a point that I'm no longer excited by. So I'm interested to know if you have any rules you follow to keep the creativity and output high while continuing to feel good about what you're producing. Yeah, all right. Okay, this is going to sound flip. My answer to this question is like, how did you put it? What was... Do you have a framework? Yeah, I do. Okay, you ready? The framework is finish it. And I don't mean for that to sound quite as hostile as it does. You should just try to finish it. And then you will have succeeded. All right. And if you have to hate it in order to finish it, that's okay. You know, and if you sort of don't know what you think anymore by the end, but you finished it, you know, that's okay too. And if you're just kind of over it by the time, I mean, I think whatever you got to do to finish it is fine. It'll be worth it if you finish it, you know? And I think the more things you finish, the better you don't really know how good anything is until you finish it. You know, that's actually why it's scary that's why it's scary to finish stuff, and it's easy to be a perfectionist, because if you don't finish it, you can just dine out on the potential. You know, you can listen back to it and you're not really listening to it. You're listening to it while imagining what it could be. I do this shit all the time. I'll listen to my unfinished record, and while I'm listening to it, I imagine the finished version. I'm like, that is pretty good, you know? But that's not what it is. That's just what it could be. It's really easy to get stuck on doing that, and that's where a lot of fear-based procrastination comes in, and we're like, why it's easy to be a perfectionist. You know, but nothing's ever going to happen if you don't finish it. So I think what you got to do is just force yourself to finish it, and whatever compromises you got to make, it'll be okay. All will be forgiven if you just decide, I'm going to define success in terms of finishing stuff, and therefore when I finish it, I will have succeeded. And even if I'm like, fuck, I really, man, that song, like, I don't even know if I like it. If it's done, just take the ugly win, you know? And it might not be an ugly win. You might like it. The other thing is, you know, you can finish it and then listen to it again in a year. I mean, maybe this is bad advice, but I feel like it's easier to judge if you finished it. You know, you can listen to it again later and be like, oh, you know what it is? The second verse kind of bugs me, but that's it. Like if I just change those lyrics, I won't hate it anymore. But then even then, is it really good to start going back in and making edits to something that you thought was done a year ago? That's probably not healthy. So, you know, I'm giving you bad advice. But I think the way to do this is to just like, if you are if you finishing it, you're succeeding. And and whatever you got to do in order to be able to finish it, that is what you should be proud of. And the only failure is a failure to finish. I think if you just think about it that way and you make sure you do give yourself credit for finishing it, you know, I think that's the way forward. Look at this guy. Perfect timing. So when is the new album going to drop? Right. Yeah. Good question. I feel like I've never been more... I've like, there's never been a more direct hit, and no one has ever scored on me harder than this guy did just now, asking this question immediately after I gave an answer to some poor guy where I was like, hey, numbskull, just finish it, idiot. So when's the new album? How about me and my album? Yeah, okay. All right, here's where I'm at. Right, okay, some of you may know, all that's left is the vocals. I started taking vocal lessons again. I'm working with a singing teacher. I really like her. She's a singer herself. You could look her up. She's cool. Her name is Leah Rich. And I decided I'm not going to push what we're like working on each song. You know, it's like I bring in the song, I try to sing it. She's like, cool. Or what about this? What about that? You know, how do I do this? How do I do that? We're going song by song by song. I decided I'm not going to push record until we've done all the songs. And we're only like halfway through the songs. Because every time we do one, I feel like I learn shit that I'm going to use on the other ones. And then sometimes she'll be like, what if you tried to learn something else? Like sometimes we go on side quests. She's like, is there a deadline? Like, when do you need to finish this album? I'll just be honest with you. I was like, well, the cool thing and the uncool thing about the project is that I'm in charge. So, you know, I can move any deadline I want at any time. I mean, it's not as cool as it sounds to have an album like that. Maybe you guys do know how uncool that is, because some of you guys have been waiting a pretty long time, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But she was like, well, if we can spend a little more time doing this and that with your voice, I think it would help. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So, so sometimes we don't even work on my songs. Sometimes she's like, you know, you should try to sing this Nat King Cole song or some shit like that. And, you know, that stuff's not easy for me. So it like, you know, it slows things way down. But we're moving through it. We're moving through it. You know, my New Year's resolution this year was to spar 200 rounds, and I did that. I mean, it took me 12 months, but I did it. I did it this month. I sparred my 200th round this month. Now that I did that, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have made my New Year's resolution to finish the record. You know, it's like only just occurring to me now. So I'll give you my word. My New Year's resolution will be to finish the record in 2026. You know, if I have to box a little bit less in order to do it, I'm willing to start making sacrifices for you guys. Okay. All right. Cool. Anyway, thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Then there's a related question I got to do. Is the pedal you're working on in the final stages? Is the pedal you're working on in the final stages and everything you want it to be, or does it still needs tweaking? So just in case you don't know, the Cyber Attack signature pedal is the thing. It's happening. It's going to come out when the record comes out. They're going to come out together. The Deep Sea Diver kind of did this with their pedal, or like Churches did this with the Screen Violence and Old Blood Noise Endeavors. My dream is to have the signature pedal and the album come out together, and so it's not just the signature pedal, it's also kind of like associated with the record. Sort of like a band that sort of prints new t-shirts for every tour, so you don't just have like this band shirt, you have this band shirt from this tour. I want the signature pedal to be like that. So anyway, to answer your question, I have a prototype, and I use the prototype on the record. It's on the record. The prototype is on it, but it's nowhere near done. There's still some functions that it can't do that it's supposed to be able to do that we need to tweak to be able to get. And there are a couple other parameters I want to reshape, but it's usable. It's on my record, and I've also even been using it in tiny little ways in my YouTube video. So you've all probably heard it by now. like, you know, if you watch one of my YouTube videos and I'm like talking about an overdrive pedal and I'm like, what you're about to hear me do is like double track myself with this overdrive pedal, but in one side I'm using the filter knob over here and the other side I'm using it there. And then you see me like two of me playing like a Led Zeppelin riff or whatever. You might notice that sometimes like I'm playing this Led Zeppelin song and then like there's bass and drums and I'm like kind of following the track. And then at a certain point, like some weird synthesizer shit kind of comes in. Or there's some like weird extra shit that starts to seep in. It's like, oh, is it? Like that's not on the original Led Zeppelin track. A lot of those like, wait, what sounds have been the signature pedal, you know? So you've heard it. But even if we finish it tonight, I'm not going to put it out until the album comes out. So you guys got to wait for both. I'm so sorry. All right, here's one. Look at this guy, Razark. So there's a lot riding on the sing lessons. Yeah. I feel like I'm starting to get to know some of you, and I feel like Razark is like hostile the way I am, but more hostile. And that's okay. I get it. I respect it. I understand. Why you're here. But questions like that, it's like you're like a vulture circling the live stream, which is fine. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying like game respects game. All right, here's the next one. Have you ever dealt with right hand picking, strumming, pain, or tendon issues? Any exercises or stretches that keep you playing well? Thanks, Ivan. P.S. I got Ed's book. It's cool, from Guitar Wizard. I love that you bought the book. Let Guitar Wizard be a role model to all of you. I haven't really dealt with hand injuries. I mean, you know, nothing should ever hurt. You know, you should always do everything with no strain and no tension. You know, if you're straining to do it, you're doing it wrong. You shouldn't even be holding your breath. So anytime something is hurting, it means you're doing it wrong. You should also warm up too. You know, like don't start playing hard stuff if your hands are cold. You know, if your hands are literally cold, like if it's cold and your hands are cold, like warm them up before you do anything that's got a stretch or like a complicated fast movement. So assuming you warm up and you ease into everything, if it still hurts, it just means you're doing something wrong. You're working too hard somewhere. There's a simpler, more efficient motion you could be doing. And if you do it that way, it shouldn't hurt. That's the best I can do. What are your hobbies outside of music? Boxing is probably the number one thing. You know, also spending time with my family. Anything else? Yeah, that's it, I guess, you know. I spend a lot of my free time sort of like trying to come up with new animations. Oh, I'm holding the pick too hard and not breathing. Yeah, both of those are going to make a big difference. I mean, you should stop doing both of those. But if you can stop doing either of those, you'll start to see something. Yeah, this reminded me of something else. Where was that question? Do you ever feel trapped by the graphics or something? Where was that question? Well, maybe it's too late. Yeah, okay. How do you figure out combining music stuff with your video style? At this point, I kind of know what my music sounds like, and I kind of know what the videos look like, and so it's not that hard. A lot of times between videos, if I'm bored, I'll just start to come up with a new animation before I know which music it's going to go to. And then when I do have music, I'll try to see, hey, do any of those animations that I was sort of working on blind, do any of those work for this music? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Then in general, I kind of like to, anytime I'm working on anything musical, whether it's my album or it's YouTube videos, you know, I like to listen to it and just try to picture the place where it takes place. You know, like what is the scenery of this song? And then if I can, I'll try to copy some version of that in the animation. The other thing that makes a big difference is that like camera speed, you know, like the camera's always moving in my animations, always. I mean, not always, but usually. There's something about the tracking shot and the music that goes really good together. I mean, this is, you know, and it's not always obvious, like fast music for fast shots. It's not that simple. I remember when I first watched The Irishman, when The Irishman came out by Martin Scorsese. I saw it in theaters, and I remember wondering, like, how good is this going to be? Like, I love Martin Scorsese, but there's some of his movies I don't like, or maybe I like them less than other ones. I remember wondering, like, how much am I going to love Irishman? And it starts with a slow tracking shot to In the Still of the Night. And there was something about the speed of the camera going down the old folks hallway and the soundtrack where I just decided right then and there, like, I'm going to like this movie. This is going to be good, you know? So there's some mystical thing there I don't totally understand. It's more complicated than just, you know, match the tempo of the song with the tracking speed of the camera. I don't know. But sometimes for reasons I don't understand, something will just be moving at the wrong speed. Like if I have the guy and the guy's dancing here and the camera's like moving this way, you know, there's a difference between like, it fits with the whatever the fuck I'm doing. It fits with the Janet Jackson song if he moves this slowly, but it doesn't fit if he moves that slowly. And there's like subtleties there that are it doesn't sound like there would be that much subtlety to this, but there is, and I myself barely understand it. Maybe it's because I'm a dummy. You know, maybe people who you know, go to film school figure this stuff out. That's very possible. Have I ever been contacted by a video game studio to make their music? No, that's never happened. Also, I don't know. I don't know if I would be the guy for that, you know? Like, I make music that sounds like video game music, but I don't know if I like have the setup or like the, you know what, I got a pre-submitted question that was like this. I'm gonna switch to that now. I'm gonna bang out your question, sir, with the pre-submitted question. If you were chosen to write for or perform on a movie soundtrack, what genre of film, horror, mystery, sports, etc., or a specific franchise would you want to contribute to? Bonus question: what genre do you think would be the most challenging for you personally? I mean, if I could pick a franchise, I would pick the Terminator franchise. That's my favorite franchise. Brad Fiedel established some incredible themes on the first two movies. I would love to honor those and then maybe try to get in there with some new shit. So if I could just pick, if I can just like fantasize and pick, it would be that. Then the genre that would be the most challenging for me personally would be anything that calls for like realistic sounding acoustic instruments that is like a symphony. You know, like anything that needs to be like Hans Zimmer. I can't fuck with that. You know, I don't want to have to get sample libraries so that I can have like a brass section. I don't want to use sample libraries to do that. And two, I don't really know how to write for that kind of stuff. So, you know, anything that needs like classic sounding film soundtrack shit, I don't think I'm the guy for that. The only shit I could do would be stuff that sounds like the instrumental versions of the shit on my albums, you know. Maybe I could do a sports movie, you know, some of the Rocky stuff. I feel like I could maybe score a Rocky movie, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I feel so connected to that material that I'm assuming I could do it, you know, but how do you do the part where it's like the music has to last for exactly as it takes the guy to walk from this part of the hallway to the next part of the hallway? That seems really hard, you know? And I would hate having to deal with shit like that. Like, yeah, your thing is perfect, but it needs to be like, the whole thing needs to be 2.3 seconds shorter. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that would drive me crazy. I almost don't want the job. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that. But, you know, it would, there are aspects of it that I would have to adjust to, but I think I could make the adjustment. How do you find time to write music, having other responsibilities work in your channel? Well, you know, I don't have a day job. So like music shit and the YouTube channel is all my work. It's not like I have to like run home from the office after doing a day of like proofreading, whatever, But the one thing I do is like in my YouTube videos where I have those 5 pro tips and each one gets like 1 to 2 minutes of music. I use those 1 to 2 minutes of music to like demo songs I'm trying to write, or to try, sounds I might want to use on my record, or to like, sometimes if I have a sound where I'm like, oh, this would be good as a lead sound. This pro tip is going to be, I'm going to play a solo for this pro tip. A lot of times I'll be like, well, is there a solo on my album that's missing? Could I just record that solo using this pro tip? And then, I'll just put the solo that I recorded for the album in the YouTube video. I've done that a couple times for solos for songs you guys haven't heard yet. That's how I do it. I try to use the YouTube to workshop my own material as much as possible, and that's kind of a 2 birds 1 stone situation anytime I can find one of those. It's a long work day. You have to order food. What are you getting? Probably pizza. I know that's like not an interesting answer, but I really sometimes you just want the thing that you want. You know what I mean? Like, we live in a cruel world, unfortunately. We live in a world of like nonstop atrocities and pain. I'm not even like doing a bit here, but that being true, like, if you just know that the thing you want is like pizza for dinner, you know what I mean? Like, that's what you got to do. Sometimes it just doesn't get better than that. Or like, you just want to hear the song you want to hear. You just put on headphones and listen to a song for 5 minutes, and it's the song you wanted to hear. Like, it might be all we have, unfortunately. Thanks for what you do and sharing it with us. It's very different and refreshing. I appreciate it. I'm glad you enjoy it. Look at this guy. Your Boss PS6 Harmonist Had to Be Advanced was a life-altering video. I'm glad you feel that way. I didn't really think I came up with any of these ideas. I took music classes in college where they like force you to listen to experimental music and electronic music and like Edgar Varese and Stockhausen and all these people. And, at first I kind of didn't understand it. In fact, I didn't even respect it. And then later I did. One thing that really helped me is realizing how much the musicians I already did like were doing a version of this. Michael Jackson was very interested in pushing the envelope sonically on a production level. Just what can we do with recorded sound that'll be unusual while we're also making the most commercially successful music of all time. When I realized like, okay, cool. If MJ could fuck with some of this stuff, music concrete concepts, like, sound as texture, the sound object, what if you just think of timbre itself as something you could like run your fingers over? What would the feeling be if you could touch the timbre you've created? When I realized like, Michael Jackson was thinking about shit like that, I was like, all right, who am I to be superior to this? And so, oh, yeah, okay, look at this. I really like your answer. What classes for college do you recommend? Well, any sort of music engineering class, anything where they're like telling you how to set microphones, anything where they're explaining the science of sound, what a waveform is, anything they're talking about synthesis and synthesizers, anything where they're talking about experimental weird music, electronic music, 20th century music, that I'd say all of that is probably valuable. But sorry, the last thing was that like when I made my video about the Boss PS6 Harmonist that you changed your life, and that was one of the early videos on my channel. I don't think there was anything new in that video. The only part of it that was new was that like I took all those ideas that I learned about in college and did it with a pedal that people hadn't talked about that way before. But that was a small leap. That was a smaller leap than what any of those other guys did, So, I appreciate that it seemed like that was a big deal. But also, you know, it was only really a big deal too because YouTube is set up so that, like, if you make a video that's talking about a product, you know, I had made videos on my channel before I made videos that were kind of like commercials for products. You know, my pedal videos are kind of like commercials for products, you know, like I'm talking about products. The videos I make about this shit can be used to sell this shit. I'd made videos before. I had music videos on my channel. And it was just like, that's nice that you made a music video. Good work, son. And then when I made a video that was like, oh, you know, people could use this to sell shit, like the numbers went up, you know? And like, it's not just because the algorithm is like designed to push commercials. It's because people type in, show me commercials. You know, every single day right now, people are going onto YouTube saying, please show me commercials, except they don't type the word show me commercials. They type the words Boss PS6 Harmonist demo, right? But they're basically just sort of saying like, what channel is the QVC channel again? You know what I mean? That's like basically what's happening. So when I made a video that you could show to people who were typing that in, it did a lot better than the videos that can't also be commercials. It's a little bit different now. Once you have your own following, you know, once you start to get tens of thousands of subscribers or more than that, you can go back to just talking about whatever you want and people will tune in and watch it, you know. But in the beginning, if you want traffic, you basically need to make a video about something people will search for. Would you ever do a vlog style non-music related video again? I think your comedy is fire. Thanks. Yeah, I want to. No one watches those. My favorite videos I've ever made are the ones about like the Terminator movies, Orange Juice, what Mortal Kombat taught me about art. You know, those are my favorite videos. They like, I can't even get 10,000 views on one of those. So I'm looking forward to it, but I feel like the following's not big enough for those to work yet. I mean, I love doing these. I love doing those videos. I think I said this in the early days of my channel. I'm willing to make as many pedal videos as I got to make so that I can stop making pedal videos. I'm happy to do it, but we're not there yet. You know, I got to keep making pedal videos. And then when I've made enough and I can start making anything videos and people will watch those in the numbers that'll make it worth it, that'll be fun for all of us. At some point next year, I'm going to start making videos about like how to play. You know, like 5 pro tips for phrasing, you know. I think that'll be cool. We'll see how those go. I hope those get clicks. Anyway, but thanks for the support. I'm glad people are responding. I appreciate it. Oh, here's a good one from Tylock7. This is I like questions like this from Tylock7. Tylock7 sounds like a appears in only one episode character of Star Trek. You know what I mean? Tylock7 is like the like one episode only starring role. How do you get over being nervous once you hit the record button? All right. I think the way to think about this is not how do you stop being nervous. I think you got to reframe this as, can I still work even though I'm nervous? That's the adjustment. You can't wait till you eliminate nervousness. All you can do is start to be able to operate while you're nervous. See if you can just start to do that. You know what I mean? The red light goes on, you feel nervous, but you try to do some takes anyway. You know, one very easy thing we all forget is to not hold your breath. You know, don't hold your breath. That'll help. That might not eliminate all of your nervousness, but that's okay. That's not the goal anymore. All you got to do is not hold your breath, start doing takes. You'll learn to tolerate the nervousness. You'll learn to be able to perform under some pressure. And if you got to do 99 takes, that's okay too. You know what I mean? I got no problem doing 99 takes. I'll do it. It happens. It's fine. You know, and when you get the one perfect one, it doesn't matter that it took you a long time. You know, it feels so good. You can listen to the one perfect one from now on, and that'll be the final reality. You know what I mean? It's like when you take a bunch of pictures of yourself, or you're like trying to take headshots or whatever, and like, that like that looks bad, that looks bad, that looks bad, and then sooner or later you figure out like, oh, that's my angle. All right, I'll just be this from now on. Every YouTube thumbnail I ever make, this will be my angle. That's fine. There's no shame in getting to that point, So anyway, you gotta switch the goal. The goal is just to get used to be able to function at all while you're nervous a little bit, and then you become a person who knows that about himself or herself. You become a person who knows like, well, I might not be nerves free, but I can still do it if I have to. And then, once you get there, you realize that it kind of doesn't matter if you're nervous or not, because well, if I have to, I can just do it while I'm nervous. And then that's sort of, that kind of over the years ends up being the same as not getting nervous anymore. The key thing is that you just need to put in the time to reach the point where you can function while you're nervous. So you just try to record, work on a lot of demos, try to push record every single day, work on some tiny little project that's not really important. It doesn't matter, just so you have experience pushing record. You have to hurl yourself at it. You just have to spend enough time doing it where it's like, you have the 1,000-yard stare. That's the thing, The guy who sort of seems like he's seen it all, you got to see a lot of shit in order to have that. There's no shortcuts, People can be born with a lot of talents, but nobody gets born with grit. It can only be earned. It can only be earned. That's the thing about it. You just got to take a lot of hits, and then over time you'll be tough. But there's no such thing as getting tough the easy way. It can only be done the hard way. All right, cool. Let's keep going. How do you? Here's a sort of a technical one. How do you go about creating sounds from specialty pedals like the JHS Colorbox Cran that has that sweet DI Neem sound? I'm poor and want to make it. How do we get that Mick G sound everyone was chasing 8 months ago without using a Tascam? This is where like some education in terms of the basics of effects comes in handy. My understanding is that the Tascam sound is doing a little bit of compression, and it has some kind of EQ profile, and people were going direct in. So no amp is part of it, and a little bit of a compressor pedal and some kind of EQ thing would do it. You could probably do it if you just recorded the sound of your pure pickups, went into any kind of compressor, and then use an EQ pedal to like, I don't know, either take the high end off if you want the lo-fi thing, or give yourself sort of a weird high end boost if you want the like thwacky thing. But I feel like this is a low level answer to your question, because I'm just like telling you this is like when you look up the answer in the back of the book. You're supposed to be able to understand how to answer the question for yourself. Understanding how effects works is good. And like I learned that from like taking a college class that had a music textbook. I think it was written by some guy named Case. Maybe I could find the textbook. It was a good textbook. But like, I think learning this stuff sort of where like on day one they teach you the day one shit, and then on day two they teach you the day two shit. I think that's good. I think you learn stuff better that way than if you just ask ChatGPT. I think there's something to be said for like learning something in that kind of way, because I'm trying to find. Sorry, I'm also trying to see if I can find the textbook that was in the class. You know what I'll do? I'll put this in the video description later. I can't. I don't want to shut down the stream while I look for some textbook I can't remember the name of. If you're watching this tomorrow, look in the video description. I'll have the title of the book I learned all this from. But it's not just a book; it's a class. I think learning this is good. Here's another thing I'm gonna say. All right, this goes back to some of the questions about like, how do I find time to do this? And like, you know, how do I balance the things? And like, how come I'm able to do the things I'm able to do? You're going to have to take my word on this. You know, you're just going to have to believe what I'm about to tell you is true. I have never used ChatGPT once in my life. I've never used it. I've never used Claude. I've never used any of them. I mean, the closest I've come is I'll Google something and it'll give me an AI thing. And then like I scroll past it to see the Google results. Sometimes I end up seeing the thing the AI wanted to tell me. But like, I've never used any of that stuff. And the reason is that, I mean, some of it is because like, remember how like I've like seen the Terminator movies like 10 trillion times? Remember how like every time I've ever done a live stream I talked about the Terminator movies? Like, see if you can guess why maybe I'm not using ChatGPT. That's part of it. Then there's some sort of ethical considerations as well. We don't even have to get into those. I'm not going to get into those. There's a third reason, which is just that like I think it's weak to have a computer do something for you that people used to be able to do. You know, using AI to like, you know, whatever, sequence a bunch of different protein calculations in a way that is like faster than any human could ever do it so that we can like understand how to like, you know, whatever, spot breast cancer sooner. I'm all for it. That's fine. Using ChatGPT to do something that people have been able to do for thousands of years, you know, like write a letter, that I think is kind of dumb. You know, everyone who has ever lived has been able to write a letter. You just fucking write down what you meant to say. That's it. You know what I mean? If you're going to hand that over to the computer, what's even left? You know, sooner or later, like, I think you're supposed to be able to be a person who can do shit. I think you need to be able to do shit. That's just a sort of moralistic prejudice that I have. I think people are supposed to be able to do shit, and I think you're supposed to be able to do things. And I think it's kind of like embarrassing and weak to just like be like, nah, I don't have to do things anymore. You see what I'm saying? Now, did I just overstate the case a little bit? You probably, you know. Are there people who have bigger followings than I have is because they were able to delegate their time to their AI assistant and they like maximize their productivity by using Claude, and now they have like all these AI employees and they're like growth exploded and they've got like 100,000 followers. You know, I see ads where people tell me that's what they're doing. You know, maybe those people are more successful than me. Okay, fine. You know what I mean? Well, if you want that kind of life, you could go on their live stream and ask them how they did it, and they're going to tell you some shit about how to use AI in like the most efficient possible way. But since you're on my live stream and you ask me how I do shit, the answer is that I really do it. You know what I mean? I'm like really trying to learn stuff, really trying to do stuff. And I have this attitude that is about like, let's see if you can do it. You know, let's see, you know, can you do the thing? I think that's a powerful attitude to have. You know, it makes life harder, but, I think your creativity will benefit from it. And then there's this other thing next to your creativity, which is just like, do you trust yourself to persevere and stick with something if it's hard? You know, because I think I'm a creative, imaginative person, but I don't have that going every second of every day. You know, I can't just sort of turn on the faucet and get the full power of my creativity every single time I want it. You know, it dries up for me too sometimes, often. So on those days, there's this other thing that's not part of being creative, which is just that, have you built up this sense about yourself? Do you believe that you yourself can stick with something if it becomes not fun and is a little uncomfortable? You know, is that a thing you could convincingly look in the mirror and say to yourself? Because if it is, if you believe that about yourself, that's good, because things are going to be hard and it is going to be uncomfortable. And when you do feel uncreative, you're going to sort of have to fake it till you make it a little bit. But if you know you're a person who can do that, it becomes that much easier to do it. You just think, well, I'm going to do the thing I tend to do. You know what I mean? So I would say try to cultivate that attitude if you don't have it already. And the way you cultivate that attitude is by, you know, meeting challenges and doing shit that's not easy and seeing yourself do it. Finish something even if you don't love the song. You know what I mean? Spar 200 rounds even if you stopped feeling like it at a certain point or whatever. Those are the examples in my life, but you can make up your own examples. You know, the owner of my gym says we must appease the amygdala. Now, I don't know how true this is scientifically, but I think it's very true on a sort of moral level. You know, there's this part of our brain that was evolved to sense threats and deal with danger. That's a thing we all have, okay? And if you don't give it anything to do, if you just try to live the most danger-free, harmless life, that part of your brain isn't going to have enough of a job. It needs a project. So it's just going to invent projects. It's going to manufacture anxiety, right? This is like one way that people can become neurotic. But if you like give it something to chew on that's a legitimate challenge, you know, if you meet a legitimate challenge, you find like adequate sources of adversity, you know. I'm not saying do stuff that's going to get you killed. I'm just saying do something that's hard, that is like a worthy adversary, as Walter Sobchak would say. Try to find a worthy adversary and do your best against it. You're going to give your amygdala something real to do. And then when that's over, your amygdala will be like, cool, that was a good day's work. You know, and you're going to have this really good feeling. It's the feeling of your amygdala being like, I think I could be done for today. You know, you enjoy the rest of your night. I got what I needed. You go enjoy yourself now, you know. So that's an important thing to do in and around the days when you're not having like the greatest inspiration you've ever had in your life. All right, cool. What is the Cybertech go-to coffee order? I don't drink caffeine. I'm really sorry. I don't smoke. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do drugs, and I don't drink caffeine. I'm really sorry. I never even like the taste of coffee. I don't even like coffee-flavored things. Like if they have caffeine-free coffee ice cream or something, I don't like it. I love Walter Sobchak. Yeah, me too. Walter Sobchak is incredible. Of course you love him. It's because we're the same guy. Walter Sobchak is my favorite type of movie character. This is Walter from the Big Lebowski. My favorite type of movie character is like the absolutist who is like so absolutist that he ends up like not being able to function in our society. You know, the guy who has like such strict rules that he ends up becoming a villain. This is like my favorite type of character. And I actually think that like, you know, one cool thing about the Big Lebowski is that like the dude is like kind of fluid. You know, he's like, he doesn't live with the same rigid, insane, this is the line in the sand that you do not cross shit that Walter lives by, you know? But he's friends with Walter. And I feel like there's kind of this metaphor here where like the dude is the ego. The dude is like the pilot in your mind who like gets to decide which other part of you is in charge. And Walter is like the superego who's like, these are the way things are supposed to be. This is how everything should be. You do not step over the line when you're bowling. That's a foul. You do not do that, right? You do not lie about getting kidnapped. You do not demand a ransom if there is no hostage. These are things you should not do. That's Walter the superego. And then Steve Buscemi is like the id, who's like the guy who just is sort of going on urges, who's like, hey, what? Like, what about this? Like, isn't it time to roll? Aren't we kind of hungry? Hey, what about that? Like the pure sort of like just instinct, like, hey, what about thing? That's Steve Buscemi, right? But the dude is like the fluid guy who can move between both of those worldviews. And he's the one who decides when it's time to indulge either of those guys. And that's why he is the protagonist of the movie. The protagonist is always the one who can sort of adjust to the situation and the one who can sort of be like, okay, well, what's needed now is this. And that's why it's his story. But Walter is the one who's like so obsessed with the way things are supposed to be that he ends up being like kind of evil and insane. And that's a type in other movies. Like Phil Leotardo on The Sopranos is Walter. Right? If you haven't watched The Sopranos, like, I don't know what the fuck you expect to get from me. Like, The Sopranos and the Terminator movies is like required viewing before you can watch any of my stuff. If you haven't seen those and you watched one of my pedal videos and you thought you understood it, you understood nothing. Okay, like if you saw my PS6 harmonist video and you thought that was cool and you liked my animations, and then you came to this, like you're like a child who wanders into the middle of it where you have no idea what's even happening. It's impossible for anyone to learn anything from my videos if they haven't seen The Big Lebowski or The Sopranos or the Terminator movies, because Phil Leotardo in The Sopranos is Walter Sobchak, and that whole speech where he's like, I'm sick of Tony's crew. They're like not even a family. They're a glorified crew. Everything they do is wrong. And when they make guys, they don't even do it right. They don't have the sword. They don't have this. And then one of his consiglieres, I think Albie, is like, well, Phil, like, what difference does that make? Like, if they're not making guys right, like that's just a ceremony. And Phil goes, no, either it has meaning or it has no meaning. That's how Phil Leotardo sees the world, right? We all know he did 20 years in the can, during which time he had to compromise, right? He wanted to fuck a woman. He had to jerk off in some Kleenex. He wanted a manicotti. He had to eat grilled cheese on the radio. He compromised. That's over. He did his time. He never snitched on anybody. He followed the code. He did everything right. Now that he's out, he cannot tolerate anything that is not according to his code, right? He's the absolutist who, like, is so insanely hooked on his absolutism that he ends up unable to function pro-socially in the world. He becomes the nemesis. And then the other example of this, of course, is the Terminator, right? What is the Terminator but a killing machine that is like must obey its programming, right? It's like so fanatically devoted to murdering Sarah Connor that it just kills every Sarah Connor in the phone book, right? But then in the second movie, where the Terminators can learn and they can adjust, that's when they become people, right? That's when they become sort of what it is to be a protagonist, or what they now call a main character instead of an NPC. You see where I'm going with this? All right. Would love to catch more of these streams. What time do you usually go online? It's usually Tuesdays around 2 p.m. because that's when YouTube Analytics says I have most of the highest concentration of my audience is online, is like a Tuesday afternoon. So that's usually when I do it. I love doing these. I don't want to do them too much because you can sort of like kill your channel's analytics by doing too many live streams. I love doing these, but they don't get the same views as like a successful pedal video. And I have I have like pretty high engagement on my channel. You know what I mean? Like there's how many subscribers you have. I'm in the game. I have like 49,000. That's enough to be in the game, but it's not enough for like YouTube to send you the fucking plaque. I hope to get the plaque. I'm looking forward to it. But in the meantime, my watch percentage is good. My comments are good. People like my videos. People watch my videos just because they're my videos. I make, I think if you Google what is the average, I think if you ask Google how much does a typical YouTuber make from 1,000 views who has a monetized channel, how much does a typical monetized channel get for 1,000 views? Google will tell you something like $5. I'm always north of that. I can sometimes get more than $7 out of 1,000 views because people watch a lot of the video. So I feel like even though it's, my subscriber number is one thing, I have like a high sort of like highly engaged, highly devoted audience for a guy with 49,000 subscribers. So I thank you all for that. But it also means that like I don't want to nuke my watch duration numbers, and the live streams are great, but if I did these once a week, it would sort of like mess up some of my averages. I'm sorry I gotta play the game like that a little bit, but like I said, I don't have a day job, and I like not having a day job. What is your camera setting? I shoot my pedal videos on an iPhone. Right now I'm using the little camera on my laptop. That's why this doesn't look as good. I use the camera in my iPhone for the real videos. I do have to do a little bit of color correction to make it look better. I push the contrast a little bit. yeah, that's it. I use a Focusrite to record all my shit. You know, this is an interface that costs less than $200. Do you have any tips for how to release music as independent artist? I mean, yeah. Yes. You know, I ended up making pedal videos and becoming a YouTube guy, and I made pedal videos that sounded like what my original music sounds like, and I put animations in my pedal videos that look like the animations in the music videos for my original channel. So I said before that things started going good for me when I started making YouTube videos that were basically commercials for products, you know, where I'm just talking about products the whole time, and people who want to buy products end up watching my videos. But the sneaky thing I did was that while I was making commercials for the products, I also made commercials for my original music. And all the stuff that I played sounded like my original music. And all the animations I made looked like my original music videos. So while you were watching the commercial for the Boss pedal, you were also getting served a commercial for, you know, Cyber Attack's original music career. So that's how I did it. Is that going to work for you? You know, I don't know. It sounds like it's going to be hard if you just upload music and hope that it succeeds on the strength of the music. It seems like that's hard to do. You know, could shows be a thing? Is your show good? Could you like play shows with other bands? Could you have the best show? You know, it seems like there's always bands that make it a certain distance because they just crack the live thing. You know, I was in a band that was trying to do that for a while, and we had some success. You know, we opened for the Tubes, we opened for Men Without Hats, we opened for Sebastian Bach. You know, there was a minute where we were sort of like the young go-to band to open for the successful 80s legacy band. You know, and we were playing a sort of updated, fun version of fun 80s rock. You know, then that band broke up. I have now, Cyber Attack has now reached more people and is higher internet numbers and is more successful than that band was, you know, but, you know, I don't know. All right. Have you thought of making 5 hardcore pro tips for weird plugins? I mean, I have a video called like recording how to be advanced and how to be creative, and that's basically what the video is. Not a lot of people watched it. Maybe by now. I think it's less than 20,000 views. Somewhere on my channel, originally it was called GarageBand, how to be creative. And then I was like, oh, maybe GarageBand is too specific. So I changed it to like recording DAWs or like digital audio. I don't even know what the fucking video is called anymore. I'm sorry. But somewhere on my channel, I have a video that's just about recording software and plugins. And that's my video about this. Although I will say that, you know, part of the reason why I originally made it about GarageBand was because I was also just a little bit trying to tell everybody, like, you could do it with the cheap bullshit version. You know, you can make stuff sound good with this is an SM58 mic. I'm recording into a Focusrite. I'm using the camera in my laptop, and I use GarageBand to mix my shit as much as possible. There are things GarageBand can't do, and so when I have to use a big boy DAW, then I do when I'm forced to. But, you know, I like frozen pizza, remember? I really, really like frozen pizza, you know? So I'm a guy that thinks frozen pizza is exquisite. And so I'm a guy that thinks you can make shit sound exquisite on GarageBand. I got a song in an Apple commercial with shit that parts I recorded in GarageBand. You know, I didn't mix it. John mixed it. He probably used big boy stuff. But like, you know, I was on a record with the drummer of Maroon 5, and like I sent in my stuff I haven't recorded in GarageBand, and everyone was like, man, cool, sounds good. You know what I mean? The point is, I'm sorry to keep coming back to this, but when it comes to like being able to play, you know, I didn't do cheap, trashy bullshit. You know, I took guitar lessons for 10 years. Did I take guitar lessons for 10 years? I took guitar lessons for 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. I took guitar lessons for 5 years. I didn't fuck with effects for like 10 years. Like the first 5 years I was taking lessons, and 5 years after that probably. something like that. I didn't really fuck with effects. I just played straight. You know, in fact, I even had sort of a bullshit attitude about it, believe it or not. I was like, effects is for people who, you know, can't do it. You know, that was chauvinistic and I think sort of wrong-headed, you know. Obviously, when I decided to fuck with effects, I converted and became like a radical for the other side. You know, but the point is that, like, I think if you turn the effects off, like, I would still, the playing would hold up. You know what I mean? Like, you know how sometimes people say, like, sometimes people will criticize fast players by saying that, like, if you slowed the lines down, they wouldn't really be lines. You know what I mean? Like, who's the guy that gets criticized for that? You know, Zach Wilde, maybe. I don't know. I feel like sometimes people say, like, he does it, it's fast and it's cool, but if you slow it down, a lot of it is just kind of like pentatonic patterns. Now, fast is a vibe. Like, sometimes stuff is just cool because it's fast. That's okay. But if that's the only thing you can ever do, then yeah, I agree. That's failing as a player. But there are also guys where, like, if you slow it down, there's all kinds of crazy shit happening in there. You know, Pat Metheny comes to mind. Like, he does some crazy fast shit, and if you slow it down and you look at the note choice, it's like mind-blowing in there, you know? And I try to do a version of that with the effects. You know, like the whatever the last thing I recorded and played using ring mod was, I think if you took the ring mod off, like I did a video recently where I used ring mod and I soloed over Green Dolphin Street, speaking of jazz. And like, I think I had cool lines. Like, the ring mod is nice, but if you took it out, like, I think I knew what I was playing there. You know what I mean? Like, I know how to harmonize. All right, here, sorry, that reminds me of, one last question I want to do. This is from Michael from Instagram. I'll look at this guy doing I love the boxing glove emoji. My man. My band just finished tracking an album. As I'm listening to the new tracks from mixing notes, how do I pass the imperfections in my performance to focus on the big picture? Yeah, man, that's rough. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, you're not mixing it, right? You're not mixing it. You hired somebody to do it. I would say maybe you don't need to send mix notes at all. Like, how crazy would that be? If you just said to the mix engineer, look, I don't know how to hear this shit anymore. I'm too hung up on my imperfections. You know, you're a neutral outsider. I trust you. How about that? You know, what's the worst that could happen if you did that? You know what I mean? The whole reason you give it to someone else is for that reason. Would you keep recording music even if you knew no one would listen to it? Okay. Do you guys ever see that, like, terrible movie from the 80s called The Dungeon Master? It's just like about as bad a movie as you could possibly imagine. But and it's about some guy who gets summoned into some, like, evil dimension where some, like, dungeon master man has taken his girlfriend hostage. I mean, it's just not a good movie. But at one point, he yells at the evil dungeon master man, "I reject your reality, and in its place, I substitute my own." And that became a meme. Yeah, all right. So I reject your reality, and in its place, I substitute my own. Would you keep recording music if you knew no one listened to it? I maybe would not. I maybe would not. I always wanted people to hear my stuff. I was always ambitious. I've always fantasized about being a successful professional musician my entire life. I never fantasized about someday I'll finish a song and I'll be proud of myself for finishing it. I fantasized about someday I'll finish the song and people will like it. You know, I'm going to start by saying I understand and sympathize with anyone for whom the answer to this question is no. But the part of it that I reject is that you don't ever know that no one is going to listen to it. That's the part you don't know. I mean, you could decide that no one's going to listen to it, or you could make it come true that no one will listen to it by not finishing it, or by finishing it and never playing it for anybody. There's like, you yourself, by making some decisions, could make it true that no one will ever listen to it. But if you refuse to make those decisions, you don't ever really know that no one will listen to it. And so my attitude was always like, I refuse to believe that no one's going to listen to it. I'm just going to do whatever I have to do to try to get people to listen to it. It took a long time. You know what I mean? Like, I was in the game for something like 15 years before I had a YouTube channel that people gave a fuck about. Although for some of those 15 years, I was in a band that was like headed somewhere, and like the numbers were going up and people believed in us. So it wasn't like 15 years of total obscurity. But the point is that if you believe no one's going to listen to it, that's the kind of stinking thinking that will make itself come true. So I would just say refuse to think that way. Give yourself a chance. Like, give yourself a fighting chance that maybe people will listen to it, and then record it, and then try to get people to listen to it. All right, cool. Here's the next question. Under the hood of your awesome and mango guitar tones, you got some pretty sick guitar licks. Thank you. Can you indulge us on some of your approaches when it comes to soloing? Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. I do actually want to start making YouTube videos about this. Soloing, phrasing, note choice. I sort of have a lot to say about that. In a way that makes it hard to summarize right now for like a sort of a soundbite answer. I mean, I guess I would say, like, again, I give a lot of credit to my guitar teacher who has a book you could buy. In that, I think he taught me to play guitar and understand guitar in a way that is like larger and more global than any one genre. And by the end, it was like larger and more global than any one instrument, and some of this is music theory stuff, understanding how a chord progression works, understanding how rhythm works, understanding how you can line those things up. And then some of it is building up your ear so that if you hear something, you can sort of instantiate it. You can hear it and be like, oh, you know what that is? That's starting on the major seventh and going down, And then some of it is also having enough technical facility on the instrument so that you can play at the speed you're hearing, or that you can articulate notes at the way you're hearing. No choice is only part of it. I mean, what are all the parts of it? I feel like there's I guess if you were gonna like deconstruct it, there's note choice, rhythm, timbre, and then like articulation. So note choice is like, what is the note you're playing over the chord? You know what I mean? I guess at an intermediate level, you learn that if you play the root or the third or the fifth of whatever the chord you're on, it's going to sound nice, And then the more advanced you get is like, well, that still leaves, 9 other notes. Can we do something with them? And the closer you get to understanding how to use all 12 notes over every chord at any time, the more sophisticated your note choice becomes. Because believe it or not, all 12 notes are always in the game. You could play a half step above the root and make it sound cool. You could play a tritone. You could whatever. You could play a minor seventh when it's a major seventh chord. Any dissonance can be made to work, right? So that's no choice. Then there's rhythm, which is like more important. The wrong note at the right time becomes the right note. The right note at the wrong time becomes the wrong note. So, understanding placement is a huge part of it. And then there's timbre, which is like usually what I talk about. That's the guitar tone. That's effects. That's shit like that. There's that. And then there's articulation. Articulation is, to me, is like how you execute the note, the onset, whether you slide into it, whether it's accented or not, whether you mute it, whether it's like, there's a ghost note in the front of it, whether it's like beep or whether it's whip, those kinds of differences. This is the place where you can make dumb note choice and dumb rhythm and dumb timbre interesting. You know, you could just play the root over everything and articulate it in sort of a fuck you way, and I would think it was cool, you know. So I guess I would say like you gotta pick one of those 4 things and do something interesting. You know, start there. There's 4 things. I just explained what they are. Pick one of them and try to do something interesting. You know, and then once you find yourself being like, okay, that was an interesting thing on one of those 4 things. Now pick one of another 4 things and make it interesting in that category too. You know, take the same phrase, but let's say you find a cool articulation. You decide it's cool if I pick all the notes like this. Bing, ding, ding. Like super muted, super short duration, and you slide up from the fret below. So everything you play is like wink, bing, ding. And you're like, that's cool. That sounds really fucked up. That's great. Your articulation is cool. Okay. Can you make any other part of it cool? Can you change the rhythm so that it's a more interesting rhythm? You know, can you like put a rest somewhere? Can you be behind the beat? You know, can you swing it? You know, what if you made some of the notes a little more interesting so you're not just playing the root of every... You see that's one way to do it. I mean, I don't love this answer because this makes everything sort of like a checklist, and I just think that's like... you know, that's like not... You're just supposed to develop an ear for this stuff, and then you're supposed to do it by instinct, you know? But what do you do if you don't have the instinct yet? Well, you could, I guess, spend enough time trying to check boxes on the checklist until it starts to become a little more instinctual. That's, I guess, how you get there. But the good news is that I'm going to start making videos about this too. At some point next year, you're going to start to get like playing and phrasing videos. Don't understand subs. I love teaching subs. Subs is like my favorite guitar lesson to do. If you want, you could just write. I have a link in the video description for my guitar lesson link. You could fill that out. We could just do subs if you want. Subs are fun. Oh, look, this person said substitutions will open up anyone's harmonic world. Yeah, just to be clear, subs is this is the note choice thing. Subs is a note choice thing. Note choice is only one of the 4 things. You know, you don't need subs to sound good. All right. Any other questions I had to get through? Oh, yeah. Here's a good one from Better Bassist 82. All right. Look at this one. Which is less cool? Dave Mustaine's reference to the Pied Piper of Hamlin and Symphony of Destruction, or James Hetfield's reference to Peter Pan and Enter Sandman? How do we determine when it's cool to bring in children's story characters in a metal or hard rock song? Oh, boy. This is a really hard comparison. Symphony of Destruction and Enter Sandman. I admire the fact that I admire the fact that you've like correctly identified this weird sort of awkward connection between these 2 songs. That's some like great close reading there. And so it's like right and good to be able to that we're now forced to compare them. I like completely agree with the premise. But the reason it's hard for me is that I feel like Symphony of Destruction is just like a pretty cool Megadeth song. And Enter Sandman, it sort of represents this like huge thing that every Metallica fan has to deal with. You know, like Enter Sandman is kind of this like turning point in everyone's relationship with Metallica. You know, are you the kind of Metallica fan that got sucked in because of Enter Sandman and you think it's cool and you don't see what the big fucking deal is, you know? Or were you like a Metallica fan before the Black Album and then the Black Album happened and you were like, what? I don't understand the world I'm living in anymore. You know what I mean? So like, it's really hard at this point for me as a Metallica fan to just like engage with Enter Sandman at face value. It's like hard for me to do that. Like it represents so like, I mean, one thing I like and admire about Metallica is like how many different times they've done this to their fans. You know, like the many different times they've been like, hey, you're going to have a hard time dealing with this. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, going back to like Ride the Lightning, people got stressed out about Fade to Black. They were like, what the fuck is a ballad doing here? You know what I mean? What the fuck is James Hetfield doing talking about his feelings using an acoustic guitar, right? That was a problem. Then Justice for All, right? Where's the bass? Why does this record sound like shit? What happened? You know, that was a problem. Then Black Album was a huge problem. And then like, you know, the loads, everyone was like, well, we thought we were uptight about Black Album, but now we're like even more uptight about this, you know. And then the orchestra, right? S&M. It's like, well, what the fuck is the orchestra doing here? Like that's weird. And also, like, if you watch the live footage of the S&M shit, you know, it sounds like James Hetfield was auto-tuning his vocals live. You know, that's what the fuck is that? You know, we're like not even up to the recent history yet. You know, then there's Saint Anger. People got worked up about that. Then, you know, the snare drum, right? Everyone complained about the snare drum. I actually think the snare drum on Saint Anger sounds cool. It's a choice. It's fucked up and weird. I was fine with that. You know, my problem with Saint Anger is that I think it sounds dumb when he's like, you flush it out. You flush it out. You know what I mean? Like, that was a much more alarming challenge and problem than the pingy snare drum. Pingy snare drum is lo-fi and cool. You know what I mean? Like, you guys can't fucking handle something if it's lo-fi and cool. Anyway, even that record was 20 years ago. Then there was the Lou Reed thing. I mean, I'm saying this as a Metallica fan. Like, I love Metallica, but like, I genuinely admire how many times they've been like, hey, everybody, this is going to be hard for you. So anyway, what am I saying? Oh, right. So Enter Sandman is in some ways like quintessentially represents all of that. Like that song as the first track on that album, which was like, what if Metallica, you know, was like a mainstream band? You know, what if they made music videos? You know, what if people who had never heard of Metallica started to like Metallica? What if, like, you know, people who were not antisocial misfits started to like Metallica? What if Metallica got produced by people with names like Bob Rock? You know what I mean? What if it sounded like it was the work of a man who would choose a name like Bob Rock? You know, what if then, right? And Enter Sandman sort of represents all of that and everything that came after it. Whereas Symphony of Destruction is just like, if you like Megadeth, that's like, yeah, that's a cool song. It's a fine Megadeth song, you know? This is the other thing that I sort of like about Slayer, which is that, like, the worst Slayer record is just, I don't know, whichever one you like the least. Like, they all sound like Slayer records, you know? Some people talk about how there was a difference between Rain and Blood and South of Heaven, you know, because South of Heaven was like slower and had more singing on it. You know, try explaining that to, like, you know, my grandma. Like, try to explain to my grandma, like, you're going to hear this thing that's going to be awful, that you're going to hate, and it's going to be really disturbing. It's called Rain and Blood. And then when that's over, I'm going to play you another thing that is going to be different. And the difference is going to be slower, and there's going to be more singing in it. And then you play your South of Heaven. My grandma would just be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that was the same as the first. That was the same horrible thing as the first thing. Like, don't play tricks on me. You know what I mean? Like, whatever the worst Slayer record is, yeah, or like this, God Hates Us All was a real turning point. I mean, I know what you mean. Like, as a Slayer fan, I know what you mean. But, like, this is the kind of thing that is, like, going to be meaningless to anyone who was not a super fucked up Slayer fan to begin with, you know? The worst Slayer record is just, it's whatever one you don't like. But they're all Slayer records. Whereas the worst Metallica record is, like, posing philosophical problems to you. You know, like, there's like philosophy of mind issues at work on the bad Metallica records. You know, the Lulu shit, where it's just like, what did these guys hear when they released it? You know what I mean? It's like, if there's someone who, like, eats a food that you hate and you wonder to yourself, like, at what point is the experience different? You know, like, I think bok choy is disgusting. I think bok choy is like eating wet newspapers. But when I see someone eat bok choy, is it like, is their tongue catalyzing the molecules in the bok choy in a different way so that, like, that's where the difference is? Or, like, are our taste buds basically functioning identically, but then later on it reaches our mind and there's some sort of, like, qualitative difference there? You know, like, these are the sorts of questions I have for the guys in Metallica when they listen back to some of their worst material. You know, like, what Is it ever possible to understand the conscious experience of another person? What did they think they were releasing? What did they think it sounded like? You know, what if everyone else in the world is seeing the color that I think of as green, they see it as red? You know, it's that question. It's like, how do we ever prove that there's like another conscious mind in the world? Like, this is the kind of shit you run into when you have to deal with a bad Metallica album, you know? I mean, this is part of why I like Metallica. Like, it's like there's some dramatic shit happening on these records. You know what I mean? So anyway, okay, forced to choose between Symphony of Destruction and Enter Sandman. Here's the thing. I like Symphony of Destruction as a song more, but I actually think the one thing I love about Enter Sandman, and I think I've talked about this before, I just am slayed by the part where James Hetfield talks to the child. And Enter Sandman, I think it's incredible. Like, I'm truly bewildered by the choice, and I think it's amazing. Like, I never would have gotten to this in a million years. Like, what if there was a part in the song where James Hetfield guides a child in prayer? And they went for it. And I think there's something like, I think that idea is like ludicrous. And then every time I hear it, I'm like, I buy it. It's not ludicrous. Like, when you get to that part in the song, it's utterly convincing to me. When James Hetfield is like, pray the Lord my soul take. No, that's not even what the line is. He's like telling the kid what to say. And he's doing it in this way where he's like leading the child. But it's also, I get from this, there's this sense of like very solemn protection of the child. And he's saying like, I'm going to teach you this thing to keep you safe. And like, I get this very kind of like stoic, paternal, protective instinct, even though he's in tough guy mode. I honestly, I'm not making this shit up. Like, it's there in the vocal performance where he's like, if I die before I wake. He's like telling the kid to say this shit. And he's like, listen, kid, it's a little scary, but just repeat after me. And we're going to say it together and it's okay. And like, it almost ends up becoming kind of moving. Almost. He's like able to hit this line that I didn't think anybody would ever be able to hit. Where it's like, first we're going to write a song and the song's going to be Enter Sandman. And then we're going to put in a part where we interact with a child and we're going to like lead them through a prayer. It's a bedtime prayer. And then I'm going to do it in a way where I actually sound like I'm taking it seriously. And I actually seem like I'm kind of this like dignified paternal presence with the kid. And I'm going to sort of walk them through it. And it's like not going to be as corny and cringy and toe curlingly weird as it sounds like it would be. It just kills me that James Hetfield could do it. I mean, I really got nothing but respect and admiration for James Hetfield as a writer and a rhythm guitar player, as a songwriter, and as a vocalist. Like, he could inhabit the role of James Hetfield man. He could just nail it. It's incredible to me. So the fact that, and then what does Symphony of Destruction have? You know, it's like the riffs are kind of cool, but Dave Mustaine as a vocalist can't do anything like that, you know? Just like the Pied Piper. You know, cool, fine. You know what I mean? So I don't know how to pick one of these two songs anymore. I don't know how to do it, but I've given you everything I can about it. Okay. I see I lost some of you here. Yeah, not all of you could do it. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't like Black Album. If you need to hear me say it, I don't even really like the song Enter Sandman. I don't like Black Album. The only song I like is Sad But True. I think that one's awesome, but I don't like anything else about it. You know, this is where I got to as a Metallica fan that was just trying to hold on to anything. You know, how many times do you have to hear Enter Sandman if you're going to go through life as a Metallica fan? A lot. You know, this is what I got to. I met James. He was a dick. I'm sorry to hear that. You know, what can I tell you? I never met him. I only just like him. All right. I had another question that got deleted from my sheet that I remember we have to do, which is, it was a hair metal question. It was, what is the best hair metal question? What is the best hair metal song, and can the best hair metal song ever transcend the genre? It was something like that. I got a question on Instagram. I forgot to write it down, but I wanted to deal with this. What is the best hair metal song, and can it ever transcend the genre? I'll put it in the thing. What is the best hair metal song from unknown Instagram guy? Okay. So first we have to say, that I agree with Eddie Trunk on the use of the word hair metal. I always think it's weird when people talk about hair metal because originally hair metal was a slur. It was used to insult that type of music. It was used to just insult a certain kind of dumb heavy metal or heavy metal influenced rock and roll pop music of the 80s that was just kind of derivative and stupid. And I think a lot of the music of that era is derivative and stupid. I don't really like Great White or Cinderella or Poison or Motley Crue or Dokken. And the bands I do like from this era, I also kind of feel like it feels wrong to describe them as hair metal. I don't think of Van Halen as hair metal. I don't think of AC/DC as hair metal. I don't think of Guns N' Roses as hair metal. Now, is that just because I internalized the slur and so I just think, well, you're not supposed to slur the bands I like, so that's why they're not hair metal? Or is it just that some of those bands were like doing real work and wrote songs that were cool, and some of them were kind of trendy and dumb, and they wrote stuff that's kind of trendy and dumb, and so it feels more right to call the trendy and dumb stuff an insulting name, and it doesn't feel right to call the not trendy, not dumb stuff an insulting name. I think that's what's going on there. I think that's why certain bands seem like hair metal and certain bands don't. Like it's almost like what would happen if we just decided what's the best dumb rock song. It would feel wrong to pick a band that you didn't think was very dumb for that. Okay, but then it's like the comeback will be like, well, okay, but just like let's relax a little bit with like what's trendy and what's dumb. What if we just said in the 80s, let's just be value neutral for a second. In the 80s, a certain type of very commercial, MTV-friendly pop rock music that was inspired by heavy metal became popular, and like music videos were a big component, and like the visual presentation, whatever you think of it, was a big component. What's the best song from that era? I tried to think of this. I also started wondering how much hair metal is American. How essentially is it supposed to be American? Oh, Wasp. I forgot about Wasp. Yeah, Wasp is in the conversation, but Wasp was so crazy and like so. Also, Wasp, by the way, appears in that movie, The Dungeon Master. I remember like 20 minutes ago I was talking about this movie called The Dungeon Master. Wasp is in that movie. How cool is that? It's like it's all connected. Anyway, I like Wasp. So once again, the reflex for me is to try to justify why they weren't hair metal, and I think they were like so offensive and were doing such fuck you stuff, with the stage show and the bladed penis stuff and the mannequins and the guillotine and the nuns and like all that shit, all the problematic shit, that like I almost feel like they were too edgy to be hair metal, Maybe then you would say like, well, the Motley Crue shouldn't be hair metal either. My other question is like, how American is it? Because like one band that came to mind, if I'm trying to pick a song from this kind of fashion trend that I like, Def Leppard comes to mind because I like a lot of Def Leppard songs. I like Rock of Ages. I like Hysteria. I like Love Bites. I like Photograph, of course. I like how sort of porn the lyrics of Love Bites are, and he's like, do you look in a mirror? You're getting these like unsolicited details about like Joe Elliott's sex life where you're just like, all right, man, like, I guess you're letting us in. Did anyone ask for this? I think there's something funny about he's asking, do you look in a mirror when you make love? There's something funny to me about like, he wants to know if anyone else is on this trip. If I had to pick a band that was from the sort of putatively hair metal, again, I'm uncomfortable sort of really working with the term hair metal. But if I had to pick a band that is conventionally described that way, Def Leppard comes to mind as a band I would like, a band I do like that maybe fits the label. But the fact that they're not American to me also means there's like something missing. Like I guess I'm saying that I feel like it's supposed to be quintessentially American somehow. And so I think what we're left with for the band and the song that like most people would agree belongs to the genre, but then also transcends the genre, I think is probably Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. I don't love Bon Jovi. I definitely don't like Richie Sambora's guitar playing. All the vocoder shit I think is so annoying. They're like, blah, blah, blah. Like I'm a guy who like his whole fucking thing is like, what if we made annoying guitar sounds good? You know what I mean? What if we decided that bad guitar tones were good? And there's one bad guitar tone where I'm just like, that ruins it. And to me, it's the Richie Sam. It's the guy who's like, whoa. Sorry, we talking about bad guitar tones? Because I got one. What about if everything all the time was just blah, 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 and like every guitar part I ever played was just going like blah, 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 blah. I would be like, all right, you made me change my mind about saying bad guitar tones were cool. It's like the kid who takes the joke too far and ruins the joke, you know? It's like now we can't go on the trampoline anymore because one kid took it too far. I feel like that's what Richie Sambora did with this vocoder bullshit. I hate it. But they're from New Jersey and everybody loves them, and I'm from New Jersey. So, you know, can I really bring myself to hate them? I mean, no. I don't like them, but I can't hate them. And I there is a certain type of craft behind a song like Living on a Prayer. You know, I can admit it. You know, the pre-chorus of that song is about as catchy as most people's chorus. You know, most people would get to a song they're writing and be like, we gotta hold on to what we got. Doesn't make a difference if a little or a lot. You know, that would be like, they would be like, cool. It's not, what could I possibly write that'll be catchier than that? That'll be the chorus of my song. Bon Jovi, with the help of their co-writer Desmond Child, was like, oh, son, we can get catchier than that. That's just going to be the pre-chorus. You know, that's high-level songwriting. I think the production style and the Richie Sambora bullshit is annoying. You know, I think it sounds a little cheesy, some of the sounds they got. But the songwriting is no joke. And I like the angle. Living on a Prayer is a great title. You know, I like that it talks about the union being on strike. It's like there's some nice little vivid slice of life details in the lyrics that I buy. And then the real thing, though, the real thing now, this is one of those songs, it's like Enter Sandman, where like I've heard it so many fucking times that like I just have to find something to reach onto that is like what I pay attention to while I have to listen to the song again. The thing in Living on a Prayer that I kind of like the most is that there's a key change, but there's a short measure right before the key change. The key change happens after a measure of 3 in a song that's all been 4. Can you hear it? Can I hear it? Can you hear it in your head? Would you make it or not? Oh, it's not. I can't really do it. I can barely hear it. But like the part right before the key change, they're going through, and that measure stops on 3. We go for the gold if we make it, or 3-1 halfway there. The 1 jumps a quarter note earlier. I heard that song like 10 gazillion times before I even noticed there's a measure of 3 right in the middle of that song, right before the most noticeable part of that song of all time. So I feel like that song sort of earned its purchase on the world, and I feel like if there's either no such thing as a hair band or Bon Jovi is a hair band, and I feel like that song transcends the genre pretty good. And that's cool. Is that true? The key change goes up a whole step instead of a half step. That's interesting too. Good ears, Jeremy. I also feel the need to say that like John Bon Jovi, look, he's a hardworking guy. He can hit some high notes. He's more successful than me. I'm sure he's not lazy. You know what I mean? Like, that guy worked hard his whole life. I think he earned his success. I also just feel the need to say he's been busted a bunch of times singing to backing tracks live. You know, he'll like go away from the mic to like shake hands or whatever, drink a bottle of water, and then he won't get back to the mic on time, and his voice will be coming through the PA system. I mean, like, you can YouTube this, and like he just sort of shrugs and grins at the audience. Like, it's happened repeatedly. And I just feel like someone needs to point out that, like, you know, one of the guys in Milli Vanilli killed himself. You know, Milli Vanilli got busted for this, doing the exact same thing. It happened it happened at this amusement park called Lake Compounce. There's an amusement park called Lake Compounce that's like cute and small. They got some nice little roller coasters there. And if you visit Lake Compounce today, they have a plaque saying, it was at Lake Compounce that Milli Vanilli performed and the backing track glitched out and they were exposed for lip syncing at their live performances. That happened at Lake Compounce, and they got a plaque commemorating it. And I like Lake Compounce, but I was like, you got a plaque for that? Because, like, the backlash was so severe that one of the dudes in Milli Vanilli killed himself. He killed himself because people were so outraged about the lip syncing. And all these years later, it's like, well, you know, it's John Bon Jovi. How mad can you really get? So there's a part of me that just kind of feels like this can't be right. You know, that kind of a double standard there. I mean, I'm not saying John Bon Jovi should kill himself, but I'm just kind of saying, like, what do we do about the fact that, like, 30 years ago, this was a life or death issue, and then at some point we just decide, oh, it's not that important. You know what I mean? It's like, so much to, like, find that guy's family and just, like, you know, make sure they're okay or something. Oh, look at this. Doesn't mean he's not really singing. Like, in the recordings, his voice is layered many times. Come on, dude. Whose side are you on? Yeah, okay, maybe he's relying on some, like, pre-recorded overdubs. I mean, like, I don't think it's life or death, but, like, come on. You know what I mean? Like, I think using any backing tracks is kind of bullshit. You know, I know everybody does. I get it. But to me, it's like, it's kind of just like using ChatGPT. Like, everybody does it. I get it. I'm not saying that the people who are doing it need to feel as ashamed of themselves as the Milli Vanilli guy did. I'm not going that far. But I'm just saying, like, let's be real. You know what I mean? Like, this is the people who go into the video game and go into the options and set the difficulty to easy. You know, it's in the options. You can do it. But let's just be real. That's what you're doing. You're not playing the real game. You know what I mean? You're playing the easy version. All right. Do you mess around with different string gauges? I think this will be my last one. Here's what I do. I always, one of my favorite bands of all time is AC/DC. There's not a lot of guitar players that I spent years of my life trying to imitate. It's probably just Jimi Hendrix and Angus Young and Malcolm Young. And it was when I was a teenager. I spent a lot of time learning stuff and, like, listening to riffs and learning solos and trying to figure it out by ear. And if I couldn't figure it out by ear, I'd bring it to my guitar teacher. You know, I learned to play a lot of different people's stuff, but I would say there are only two players that I, like, actually tried to be able to imitate, like, not just play the solo note for note, but, like, really get the nuances of the attack and the timing and the weirdness of it and the little peculiarities, like, really trying to be like, I just want to be able to sound like that guy. And I think the only two players I ever really invested in doing that for were Jimi Hendrix and Angus Young, and also to an extent Malcolm Young. And one of the cool things about AC/DC that I loved is how different the Angus Young and Malcolm Young parts would always be. How, like, they would hit different chord voicings of the same chord, and that, like, their durations would be different, you know? And Malcolm Young could often sort of cut his duration short in this way that would be funky. So, like, Angus Young would sort of crash through the chords and hold them, and Malcolm Young would choke them off and sort of syncopate them. So like, this is gonna be annoying. This is gonna sound like Beavis and Butthead singing, but like in a song like "Girls Got Rhythm," you know, Angus would do ba da ba da 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 ba da ba da 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 da, and Malcolm Young would do ba ba da da ba da da ba da ba da 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 ba da, and those little from Malcolm Young were so much cooler against the more blunt sort of like kid, you know, detonating dynamite playing style of Angus Young. And also their tones were pretty different. You know, Angus Young had that very sort of in-your-face bee sting attack, and Malcolm Young had like less distortion than you would think. It was stiffer. And I always loved both. And, you know, you can only ever play one at a time. But I would always sort of be like, man, both of these parts are so cool. Or like Thunderstruck, right? There's the flashy part. Right? When you're 15, it's like important to be able to play that. But the Malcolm Young part is also fucking cool. And I would go back and forth between being in love with both of those. And the reason this is an answer to a string gauge question is that Malcolm Young used heavy strings and Angus Young used lighter strings. And both gauges are cool. You know, people say that heavier strings have better tone, and I really don't think that's true. I mean, there's especially if you use distortion, lighter strings have this sort of like snap, you know, like Eddie Van Halen strings were pretty light. And I think that's a great example. Like the guitar tone on Panama, it just like, it's so snappy and flicky, you know, but that's very different than the stiffness of like a Malcolm Young guitar part that's also cool. You know, like the descending chords at the beginning of For Those About to Rock. Dun, dun, dum, ba, dun, dun. There's like a dun, dun to the Malcolm Young heavier string, and there's like a bam, ding, 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 like a flickierness to that lighter string that Eddie Van Halen or Angus Young would use. I'm sorry that my vocalizations of these are so horrible. But the point is I wanted both. So the string gauge I ended up using on everything in standard tuning is 10 to 52. D'Addario calls it a mixed gauge. They call it like light top, heavy bottom. It's the high string is 10, so it's like a set of 10s on the G, B, and E strings, and the low string is 52, and I forget what E and A and D are. But that string gauge to me is sort of like my attempt to have Malcolm and Angus on one guitar. That's how I landed on that string gauge, and I've been using it for a long time. All right, guys. This was super fun. Thanks for being a part of this. I really appreciate your support. If you want to buy my Guitar Teacher's book, there's a link in the video description. If you want to take Zoom guitar lessons from me, there's a link to that in the video description. As always, thanks for being a part of this. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.